Liz, you know I can't afford Comic-Con tickets.
Dude, no one can. Anyway.
Your hope is to go to a lame con at where they're going to have San Diego Comic-Con and hope they build the con around you.
I'm outside Hall H just pressing my face to the window.
You're like...
I see the people lining up. It's the memes in real life. Papa, the Xbox 360 people are here. Surely this one won't red
Are
ring.
these like sad Victorian time travelers that have fallen through a 360 wormhole created by Liz's grand scheme at the Red Ring of Death actually summoned them?
I did not
Who
realize...
also happen to be going to San Diego Comic-Con.
I mean, they're here now. They may as well.
Yeah, I definitely didn't realize what I started with that, with my 360.
Just a reminder, this is a spoiler-heavy podcast. Different series that require a spoiler warning will be in the description. Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Gaming Theater Podcast. Today's episode is going to be Console Wars 2. I really should come up with the Revenge, the Console Wars 2, the Reckoning.
Console Wars 2, still no handhelds.
You know what? That's the title. Console Wars 2, still no handhelds.
You know, if you all want to hear us talk about handheld consoles, as I know we should, let us know in the comments what your favorite handheld console is.
That plug really early. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and go on to, and I've got a couple of guests here with us that are going to help explain, what's the next series of generations of consoles that we have for the Console Wars. And over to my right is going to be...
My name is DandDaine. I am a award-winning tabletop role-playing game person. I stream on Twitch, and I'm a content creator. And the console I'm most looking forward to talking about is the PS8. I'm really excited to see what they do with that one.
All right, and we'll look into that PS question mark at that PSX2.
PSX2. PS10 2.
10-2.
PSXXX tricky.
Oh, man.
There you go.
Yes.
Oh.
And over to there, right, is going to be...
Hi there, everybody. I'm WG Ashwood. I'm your Fancy Focus charity streamer. I stream on Twitch and post to TikTok every single day. We select a new charity every single month that we donate towards. So help us out, come drop us a follow, and let's have some fun. The console I'm most looking forward to is the Xbox 920 Kickflip.
That's a solid one. It'll get you through the day. Well, and over by there, right, is going to be one of our favorite guests that keep coming back. Go, Spice.
How dare you?
I thought you were going to say Liz. I know! Like, I feel the betrayal just, like, coming through the
You
ether.
just keep coming
Also,
back.
Ashwood, I want you to know you're also one of our favorite guests who keeps coming back. I know he didn't say that about you, but I just feel like it needs to be said.
Man, I am going... You know what? I'm going to have to cut... right now, it could still be Liz. I'm editing that part anyway.
I can't wait to see the jump cut. And to their right, one of our most favorite guests who keeps coming back. Go, Liz.
It's just like the Liz.
Yeah.
Just that awkward silence.
They're really awkward over.
All right, one of you two take it at this point.
Yeah, I'll just go ahead.
I'll fix it in post.
Yeah, sure you will. Hello, I am Spice of Spice and Rose. I am a mixed media illustrator. I do some streaming on occasion. I hang out with cool people like Liz and no one else.
And no one else.
Everyone else here. And everyone else.
Definitely not Robo or Magus.
Or any of those.
That was a very odd call.
And I think today I'm most excited to talk about the Tony Hawk Pro Skater Xbox 359.
359.
That's also a weird console. Didn't last nearly as long, but
yeah, it was just actually one skateboard with a tiny monitor embedded into it, so you could like watch your kickflips and stuff. It's kind of cool, but didn't last.
Not to be confused with Little John and the East Side Boys 369. Damn bitch fine.
Yeah, can't get those confused.
No,
that's a classic.
There's 10 numbers in between them.
If you don't have one in your home, you better get one now.
All right, and also one of our favorite guests that keep coming back to us is going to be.
My name is Liz. I go by Zombiehand. I work a lot on GTP, and I do art And my favorite console that I am looking forward to is the Atari 360 No Scope.
It's just a shotgun. It was Grandpa's. He had it in the war.
That was in Super Smash Bros. I'm pretty sure too,
I'm
right?
pretty sure.
Yeah.
It's the alternate to the Super Scope that you could get in Smash Brothers. It was not nearly as popular for some reason.
It didn't really take off.
I like the Atari.
It's one of those musket loaders. Just took way too long. You know, you had to like refill it, and wasn't worth it.
All right, but with that being all said, let's take a quick trip to the Magical Birch Booth. So here we are at the Magical Merch Booth. Now, today's Magical Merch Booth is very special because we are celebrating our second year of podcast.
Woo!
This episode
Woo!
will be our season finale
Woo!
for season 2.
Hey.
Say it ain't so.
Go GTP!
Now, that being our season finale, that doesn't mean that we are resting on our laurels. We have big plans coming up for season 3. Newer guests, newer spots, newer things, and we are not stopping this gravy train for anything.
Heck yeah.
Not even one.
This train has no stops.
Oh, and I just got comfortable on my laurel.
0 stops.
What if we run out of gravy?
We don't stop for one gravy. We don't stop for young gravy. We don't stop for any gravy.
I'd stop for young gravy.
Not even country
If
gravy.
there's gravy, we're not stopping for it.
Yeah.
What about Thanksgiving? The holiday of gravy.
Okay, we might stop for that. That's a whole lot of gravy.
Yeah.
There's a lot of
it's
gravy,
the
yeah.
gravy holiday.
That's true. Out of all the
Gravy
holidays,
day.
it is the graviest.
Now, so if you want to hear more about our feelings on gravies and gravy-like objects, and all the other, I guess, storytelling aspect stuff that we, bring up all the time, that are also not gravy related, I cannot guarantee 100% not gravy related. It might come up. Anyway, that joke has burned itself to the ground.
I mean,
But thanks for everybody who have listened to us for this.
My
season 2.
new favorite console is the Gravy Boat 2.
I liked that one.
Thanksgiving edition. Yeah.
you might think that joke has run its course. However, this is Gravy Train Podcast.
The Gravy Train Podcast, the podcast about gravy trains.
Dang it. We're too late for April Fools, aren't we?
Very much so.
Because that would have been funny.
But that's the best April Fools of all, is to release it a month later.
May 1st.
Y'all thought.
I guess they don't know we're not recording this in March.
They do now.
That's what editing's for.
Fix it in post.
I'll fix it both. I'll just put a bleep right there. We're not editing
Just
this.
fake a newspaper. just right here. Just here, green screen it. Just put the
Oh,
the
green
with today's
screen!
date.
Yeah. This is why we need
Alright.
Ash.
This is the only reason to fake newspapers.
But for serious, everybody who's in all of our audience that's been listening, I'm very proud that we have managed to keep this thing going for 2 whole years.
Hell
on it.
yeah.
And we have subjects upon subjects that people have been interested in and worldwide audiences. And it's amazing to see all the growth that we've had on this. And I want to continue to do as much of this and as more as possible. And with that being said, thank you once again to our audience for listening to us. And then we'll be going back to the show.
Thank you!
So here we are with the second half of the console wars. I mean, half is kind of a weird number because it's an odd number of console generations. Where we left off, we started with the Generation 1, which is back in the 70s with the ColecoVision and the Odyssey, which is considered the first console. After that, we bump into the Generation 2, which is Atari, and Atari-like knockoffs that have been around. However, by that point, we end up getting to the video game Crash, which almost destroys an entire industry. You're doing so great with your Atari shock right there. That being said, we move on to the next one, which ends up being Nintendo trying to come in and saving the day with the NES and the Famicom, which it's the same machine. They just call it differently in order to help it out. But then you get into the big major console war, which is the 4th generation, which is Sega and Nintendo and everybody else who gets caught in the crossfire for that. And then you have the 5th generation, which is everybody trying to get to the next. Now, at that point, video games is no longer seen as a novelty or as an entertainment toy, basically. This is where we end up with PlayStation. We end up with the 64, and when we end up with the Sega Saturn. So all of those have been around for it. Now we're moving on to the next generation after that, which is the 6th generation. So the 6th generation, just to let everybody know, its manufacturing years have been basically from 1990, starting from 1998 all the way into 2013. This is the longest and biggest jump of a generation. This has got, in fact, most people could, some people will colloquially call it the big three. You now have the three biggest companies going into their PlayStation, which has now changed their motif to going into the PlayStation 2. You have Nintendo, which stops wanting to have its problems with memory and builds arguably an amazing system for itself, but which is the GameCube. And then the last one, which is the newcomer, the new boy in town, which is the Xbox, built by Microsoft. Now, if you noticed, at this point, Sega's not on the list. Sega does have a game system at this point, and it is and we'll stop and talk about that for a second, which is the Sega Dreamcast. The Dreamcast is an interesting machine because, technically speaking, on its specs and such, should have blown all of the other ones out of the water. So here's how the Dreamcast works. The Dreamcast itself has 4 ports built into it instead of the standard 2. Like, that's pretty standard issue to have 4 ports that we have nowadays, but that wasn't the standard issue. All the games that were designed beforehand were always for 2 players. They didn't have the idea of having more than 4 players unless you bought a special adapter, and there was, I think, not even a handful of games that was 4 players. The Super Nintendo had a 4-player game like Bomberman, but that was about it. There was other ones, but they were few and far between. There was Bomberman, and then another one, and technically speaking, Secret of Mana was could use that port if you knew about that and the secret port and everything for it. 4 players as a concept was something that's been played around with for different consoles, but this has it built in. You can have 4 players. So you can have 4 controllers for the Sega Dreamcast. The other big thing for that is it had a modem built in. You could, at this point in time, you could connect to the internet. Technically speaking, this is also where we get Phantasy Star Online, probably the first MMO or one of the earliest MMOs that you could play on a console.
Wow, that's way earlier than I thought.
Yeah.
And then the next thing for that is they have what's called, I think it's called the UMD, is the memory card that they have. So PlayStation used memory cards that you could make portable and take it from one place to another and save your games there. It was amazing. What the UMD did was go one step higher and built an LCD screen on it and treated it like a separate entity to the game, to the Dreamcast as well. I can't remember the list of games, but there was a small amount of games that would let you use that UMD because it had a screen, it had an up, down, left, right, and a BA button. So you basically had, and Dane's going to strike me for this, but you basically have a handheld with your console.
A what?
A what, Leo? Yeah.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if we've talked about those yet.
Have its own cast. You wait.
Will it?
That being said,
If you want to see handhelds talked about on this channel, be sure to subscribe to Patreon. That's Patreon. Spend your money. Get some handhelds.
that's how you get your handhelds. That's how there's some episodes that we have that are going to be Patreon, not exclusive, but Patreon requested for it. And we'll get to those in the future.
I don't think that should be our tagline, just for the record.
I might edit that whole thing out. Yeah. Sounds dirty.
Like, sign up for Patreon, get some handhelds.
I didn't think of it that way.
Everybody needs their handheld from time to time.
That's
True.
true. That's true.
I
The
I
nights
only
get
have
lonely, okay?
I only have 2.
This
can't hug every
episode will
cat.
have the most edits.
One quick sort of. Well, I'll wait for the
Wait for
giggles to
You're
subside.
You're good.
I will edit that out too.
What, you don't want that to be your tagline for GTP? Spend your money, get your handheld?
Not in season 2. Well, that's a season 3 issue.
True.
That's a season 69
You heard
issue.
it here. That's
planning
a season
ahead.
3 issue.
Heyo.
So, just as a quick note in terms of MMORPGs, it depends on how you define MMOs. They also have a number of years and dates. Some people claim this one's the first one. Some people claim this one's the first one. Right? It depends on how you quantify it. The first commercial MMORPG was in 1985, and it cost $12 per hour. It could support up to 100 players. It was called the Island of Kesmai. I may not be pronouncing that correctly, though I think a lot of people do sort of feel like the first MMORPG was Neverwinter Nights, which was released by Sierra Network
Right,
in
that was the first
92.
big one that I
Yeah.
know of.
But Phantasy
Phantasy
Star
Star,
Online
yeah.
is huge as well.
Mhm.
It
It's
needs
the
to be.
first like console one because like they sold keyboard attachments
Yeah,
so you could chat with people
yeah,
while you
absolutely.
played it. Yeah.
And that wasn't the only game that had a keyboard attached that utilized the keyboard. Famously, and with cult-like status, Typing of the Dead, which is a variation of uh, uh, of House of the Dead, but instead of having to shoot your zombie monsters, you would have to type out words. And this got big. Like, there's DLCs you can get for Typing of the Dead, I think 3 and 4, which is again a remake of the entire game done with a typing keyboard. And I mean remake. They went in and graphically changed all the agents so they're wearing a Dreamcast on their back and they have a keyboard ready already, and their hands are separated in a coordinated position. They are ready to go. But you could get DLC that could add in new favored words. There's one I know of, which I made me laugh, which is you can changes all the text um to the stuff that is to the words from a Shakespeare novels and Shakespeare plays. So your entire thing is Shakespeare plays that are used as the text for it.
Alas, poor York. I knew him, Horatio.
Do you bite your thumb at me, sir?
No, I would
No,
bite my
but
thumb,
I do
sir.
bite my thumb.
What through yonder window breaks? 'Tis a zombie.
And spelling is the sun.
That really gives new meaning to spelling pistols at dawn.
One thing I do want to talk about the Dreamcast as well. Some really absolute underrated bangers on that console. It was not successful. It did not do well. It was not around for even that long.
No, in fact, the reason why we have to bring this up is because the ideas brought up, Dreamcast is literally ahead of its time. The ideas that will be brought into there will be spilled over and used for all the consoles going forward from this point.
Absolutely. You know, we got the memory card slot that the 64 would utilize a similar idea. You've got the connective modem attachment for the GameCube, which was, as you mentioned, built into.
Which will be standard issue in the Xbox 360 going forward.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Very crazy.
The 4 controller ports, that's the GameCube, and the 64 had it before everybody else.
I was going to say the 64 had it as well, right?
They had it before everyone else, but this one made it kind of utilized as well. And then other things that are reported in there were so one of the reasons why they had the memory card slot that way is because of in Japan certain arcade games had a memory slot attachment, and you could port the famously, and this was a real problem, anybody who bought the copy of Marvel vs. Capcom 2, if you got the Japanese version, you could never unlock everything. Because the last way to unlock everything is to get a specific passcode, which some of those characters are locked behind the arcade wall. You have to put so many hours in the arcade. Also, fun fact for that game, each time that game was released for a arcade, the characters were all time locked. If the players would played so many hours, new characters would unlock as you go. And Marvel vs. Capcom 3 had the most characters, something like 80 characters in that roster. It's ridiculous.
I gotta give it to Japan. They do a very good job of enticing people to go to arcades and to do things in arcades. There's a bunch of things like that they've done.
Isn't this also kind of, not to only talk about handhelds, because Leo hates those, but like this is also kind of the point in time where you had like the Game Boy printer. And so there were certain functionalities you only got if like you went to the right Burger King or hit up an arcade or Like it was
Blockbuster had a whole printed shop that they
yeah,
did at the time.
it
Oh,
was such
that's
an
wild.
era of
Yeah.
like integration where you could do all these really cool things that you just can't do with consoles anymore.
And for the most
Bring it
part,
back.
there are still other ones that keep trying for it. Pokemon will, and I'll bring that up more in the console episode. Not the console episode, but the handheld episode. But that one is going to be about when they try to integrate, what was it, separate peripherals. One of the things that they had was a pedometer that would attach itself to your thing, and they kept that as a functionality in Pokemon Go. But yeah, so the Dreamcast fails. Now here's why, and it's some of the craziest things for it. One, in the United States, the Dreamcast had bad marketing, just in general. In the last episode, we talked about and all of his work for getting Sega to basically be on top and be the big console that and managed to overtake Nintendo, which was the big boss of all consoles at the time. Now, that's also his work on trying to promote, trying to get this new machine, and letting people know how starting up basically the console wars as we know it. Also made everyone have to step up their game with innovations on this. He was let go by the point Dreamcast came in. He was a big advocate for not pushing the Saturn because the Saturn wasn't a good, because the Saturn was a better machine than what was coming out at the time, but the Saturn itself did not have it. The audience wasn't there for it, and sometimes that happens. You can have brand new innovations in technology, but realistically, there's nobody who really wants to have it at the time.
So here's a quick question, if I may.
Mhm.
Among us here, who has either owned a Dreamcast or at least put their hands on one and played it?
Oh, put their hands on it. I've done that.
Put my hand on one.
I didn't own one, but I had a really close friend of mine who had one. That's where I played like Sonic Adventure for the first time. Skies of Arcadia. If you've not played Skies of Arcadia, they re-released it on the GameCube. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, and it's almost a direct port.
Oh, it's the best. It's one of the
Skies of
best
Arcadia was
RPGs in the world, and it was a Dreamcast exclusive for a long time.
Crazy Taxi was just a fun.
Oh, Crazy Taxi was great, and that spawned a bunch of offshoots as well, right? Like the Simpsons game.
Simpsons Hit and Go, I think is what that one was called. But there's a whole genre built around that. It had some good RPGs too, and there was I think there was a Castlevania for it, not Symphony of Night, because I know the story of Symphony of Night, and we talked about it in the Symphony of Night episode. That actually started in the Saturn. But it was such a unique game design that they did that they ported it everywhere.
Dreamcast deserved better.
It did. That's the thing. So like one of the things is that it was poorly marketed. It was poor, and it was mostly because they didn't want to shell out their work for the marketing on that, because they, in short, got burned by the Sega Saturn. It's they utilized the online features on it as much, but they didn't maximize their online features very well, and we'll see that with something that the PlayStation had a port for and never really did much with. But there was all this. They had tons of 4-player games. One of the ones that they had was Power Stone, which is the predecessor to, or which would be basically Sega's answer to Smash Brothers. Now, one of the worst things that they designed on it was, in order to save money on the design process for the security system, they backed up the security system using Windows XP instead of their own operating system, like you would normally do it. Here's where the issue lies. Tomato and Brandon was explaining that in the last console war episode. You would have, because of how that security was so poorly done, what people would do is that they would burn a copy of the game itself onto a regular CD-ROM rewritable. You can't do that with PlayStation because they have a very specific disc design that you need to do, and they didn't. But it made it easier and cheaper to process to make these games. And so what people would do is make a copy of the game on there, throw it in the Dreamcast. The full game is now playable, and whoever's doing this has spent roughly about $1 in getting a stack of CDs and trying to get those ROMs to copy. and you have the full experience, with the exception of like I think 3 or 4 games when they realized that they had to put an encoding issue in order to make it not do that. And the only time that it would work, it wouldn't work is if you had a disc that happened to have more memory that it could read. But none of the games for the Dreamcast was designed in a way to max out that memory limit. So essentially, they broke their own security, and it was way too easy to get around.
Can we blame Napster and LimeWire for the downfall of the Sega Dreamcast?
No, not for this one. That's
the next one, okay.
No, so
We'll
like
get you
it's
next
its
time,
own
Napster.
problem. To download the stuff, you would have to have keep in mind this is a 56K modem that they built in. So this is way back in the day. However, the game itself wouldn't be an issue if the game was big enough to max out the disc size. The problem was at this point, a home market CD-ROM that was rewritable that you could get only costed roughly about like maybe 20-30 cents per, because you bought them in packs, huge packs at the time, and then you still can get them in those packs, but they hold roughly about 90 megs, roughly 80 minutes, about 100 megs of data. And
cutting edge technology, 100 megabytes.
Wow.
I think it's I forget who it was. I want to say it's Bill Gates once said no one's ever going to need more than 5 megabytes.
Not me downloading multiple 50 gigabyte games and crying.
How big is Baldur's Gate?
Oh, God. Yeah, I said 50. I probably should have said 100, to be honest.
I have 4 games on my PS5, and I needed to delete one to make room for Final Fantasy VII. So.
Oh, jeez.
Yup. And that's got a terabyte, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I need an external hard drive.
Yup.
Games get bigger.
The internet wasn't that big around, but once somebody had the internet, you could make that connection, download the ROM site for that. Boom! You have a new game. You have a brand new game at the low price of maybe a nickel.
Burnable CDs, not just for making your sick mixtapes, also for stealing video games.
Yeah. So poor marketing, not a great design flaw system on it, and was very restrictive of its game design. There's not a whole lot of Western or West. When we talk about game design, especially at this point in time, there's 3 big areas. Europe, which is mostly England and a couple of other places. You just count it as Europe. The United States and Japan in general. But for the Dreamcast, they isolated it all to Japan. So you'd have to. So unless some game was extremely popular, they wouldn't bother to allow it to come over to the Dreamcast.
Yeah, we do see a lot of that problem, localization in general, during this time, right? Where I don't know how many of, like, there's this problem in media in general, right? Both entertainment, video games, and like anime, movies, that sort of thing, where you always heard stories of like, oh yeah, this version of this game is okay, but in Japan it's way better. Like, it's got way more gore, or it's got way more whatever in it, or kind of the alternative. Man, this game only released in Japan, and my cousin got a copy of it, and it's crazy. Like, just absolutely astounding how these days we just get most things, not everything. There's still some exclusives in terms of region, but it's much less of a problem now than it was 10 years ago, 20 years ago.
Because even the Switch doesn't have a region lock anymore. It's just
region locking in general
you plug and play. Yeah.
It's gone out the door for that. Now, with that being said, if you wonder how weird that can get, there's certain games out there. Illbleed is a horror game for the Sega Dreamcast, which people would actually try to get the Japanese version of Illbleed because there's due to sensory laws in Japan, the final boss of that, the final area of that, is non-accessible in the US version on it. However, all the voice acting in that is in English. Because the game takes place in the Midwest, all the voice acting and such is done in English. So if a person wanted to play it, technically they could play it because all the voice acting and all that's done for that game is in English. You just wouldn't know what you're reading. So these are sort of the innovations for it, and it for Dreamcast, and that kind of dies out. But that's the beginning of where we get into this generation. Now, going into through the generation for that, the next big thing that happens with it is going to be the Xbox, the PlayStation 2, and the GameCube. The GameCube's main goal was to sort of how do I put this, to redo its design to fix the problems that they had with the N64. They allowed third party support. If you're wondering how much they allowed third party support, one of the best, and this is sort of the big revolutionary game to what we have now for Resident Evil 2 and the remake, and Resident Evil 3 the remake. They were started with Resident Evil 1's remake, which was a GameCube exclusive, and frightening. It was scary. And it was it was intense all over the place for that. And the GameCube's little discs could hold over a gig of data. They actually could, by technical means, the discs for the GameCube, even though they were physically smaller, held more space on it than the PlayStation's discs did.
They're so tiny.
They're so tiny.
Tiny but mighty.
Mm-hmm. And then they had a bigger focus on multiplayer games, especially for couch co-op, which is why you have Alpha Smash Brothers. I think it's not the first Smash Brothers. What's the second
Melee?
one?
Yeah, 64. Melee's the
Melee would be the next one.
and seen it by some as the GOAT.
Mm-hmm. It was so much of the GOAT. That's why for a lot of times people still use the GameCube controller, and they re-released the GameCube controller design.
I will say the GameCube controller does hit different.
Mm-hmm.
Don't they still at EVO run tournaments of just the GameCube version of Smash?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's slightly faster in some cases because of how the game runs, but you could also do some weird stuff to make it slow down just enough to give you some power. It's messy if you know the evos for it and such. But this is where we have the really big Smash Brothers tournaments because things were lightning fast now. But you also had Mario Kart Double Dash, Mario Party, various other things. They really kind of leaned into the multiplayer aspect for that.
I definitely think we start to see that with the 64, right? I know that's a little bit before the time that we're talking about.
Right.
But you see things like Super Smash Bros. You see things like Mario Party. They have Mario Kart as well, though obviously not the first Mario Kart, but GoldenEye. They definitely begin to lean into it during this era of the N64, and then as they transition into the GameCube, though it was kind of panned for not having as many exclusives as people would like. They definitely wanted it to be a multiplayer-friendly console. And I think that, by and large, they've kind of continued that trend. That's kind of like one of the things Nintendo just does,
Yeah, nowadays it's sort of their big thing, especially on a single screen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And this is before we get into the big indie push for multiplayers on a single screen, which won't come in till about, I want to say 2010s, 2012s?
Well,
Somewhere
and
after that.
also- Sorry, and thinking about the GameCube, they did such a good job of making that thing portable.
Yes.
Like, it is the you can take it to a party, you can use it as a bludgeoning weapon, it is all, in one hand. The power, it did!
That
the
had
power
a
is in your
sturdy
hand.
handle, too.
It and the Nokia phone can both be bludgeoning weapons.
Oh, yeah.
I'll never forget, I saw one guy, he had more money than common sense, but he had taken out a GameCube into a parking lot. He grabbed it by a handle, and he just threw it as hard as he could into the air.
I don't like
It
that.
was a strength test between the GameCube, the OG Xbox, and the PS2.
Mm-hmm.
The whole, stories of Nintendo consoles surviving anything thrown at them.
Nintendium and Nokium.
Nokium, yeah. No,
the
brick
strongest
works.
elements.
The Nintendo brick is the strongest structure known to man, only next to a Nokia phone.
They're
but
sister
no,
elements.
super tonka tough and portable, and those still can rock too.
Mine still works.
Yeah.
Yeah, mine's still. I can't say the same for the controllers. Many Smash Brothers destroyed them, but
in comparison to Joy-Con drift,
yeah. Oh, and the fact that they could easily get reset their Joy-Con drift, it was amazing. It was, you just turn it off, turn it back on, good enough.
Yep.
No, so that's where
Beautiful
the GameCube is
system.
lying for that. Now, the PlayStation 2 will become the single most sold console ever. Bar none. There is no other thing that ever touches that. The reason why behind it is because they did two things that I thought was super genius for themselves. Number one, backwards compatibility. By making it so every PlayStation game could work on the PlayStation 2. I think there's only like 4 that doesn't work on that. But so if people were been spending money to get their to buy PlayStation games, it doesn't feel like a loss.
Take note, game companies. I know you're listening.
They
People
did.
want backwards compatibility.
That was the biggest complaint against the GameCube at the time, is like, yeah, cool, we finally got discs. We know we were mad at you during the 64 for giving us cartridges. Thanks for that. But now there's no backwards compatibility, and we hate you again because PS2 just did it better.
But yeah, so like, I mean, what? By that definition, the PlayStation 2 had, I think, until recently, the biggest library of games you could have for a console. Because anything a PlayStation, that's on top of what you got here. And it had a feature in the PlayStation to do like a buffer smoothing factor. So you can actually take those older games and make them cleaner looking while you and run faster and better for you. And the PlayStation is all over the place. It was so amazing. And that also worked vertically and horizontally.
Yes,
you want to put it on the side? Great. You want to put and the other big thing that PlayStation did was it arranged itself so that way you could run DVDs off of it. So let me give you some back history of the the antiquatedness of this. So the weirdest marketing factor on that is a PlayStation would cost, I think, like $500-600 at the time for a PlayStation 2. It was a pretty pricey one for even for by console standards. However,
The games?
No, the
Oh,
Yes,
sorry.
the
I
games
was
list.
like, what are? How do we get here? No, the.
Can you imagine $500 per game?
No, the console.
What are you, a 3DO? You get
I
out.
think the console was actually like
$299.
Yeah, I was gonna say because
Yes, $299.
Okay,
when we
yeah.
got my
What's that in today dollars?
600.
when we got
Yeah.
my
There you go, Leo.
Thank
when
you.
we got my PlayStation 3, I think it was when Final Fantasy X came out, and we got that and Final Fantasy X for I think $250 at Walmart.
That's a bargain.
That
Sounds
is a
right.
bargain for that one. Yeah. Here's the reason why I bring that up. For a cost of $299 in 1990s dollars, you could get yourself a PlayStation 2. For a cost of $400, you could get yourself a DVD player. Or you could buy a PlayStation 2 and have a DVD player.
You do both here.
And keep in mind, this is around the time where DVDs and what was their competitor?
VHS.
No.
Laserdisc.
You know, it might have. It
was
might have
Laserdisc
been
at the time,
Laserdisc.
Because
Laserdisc,
later
yeah.
will come the Blu-rays and the
HD
DVDs.
DVD, yeah. Which DVD won that one, and then loses the second fight.
The second one. But this story isn't about them.
True.
If you want to unlock that story, remember, give money to Patreon.
Oh my God, Spice.
Too
Too many calls to action.
Anyways, so with that, these two decisions make it so that way the PlayStation is, if you want DVDs, you can now have an affordable DVD player. Also, you have a PlayStation 2. You can't go wrong with not having a PlayStation 2.
True.
I held on to mine way longer than I should
still
have.
have
I still have Sly Cooper on my shelf.
Well, yeah, classic.
There's nothing wrong with that.
I still have my PS2. It's in the living room, and I remember I got my first ever pre-order that I did myself was Star Wars Battlefront 2 on the PS2, and when I pre-ordered it, it came with PS2 skin stickers, and mine are still on there, and my PS2 works perfectly.
And the PlayStation 2 has a long shelf. Like when PlayStation 3 comes out, and we'll talk about that for a bit, I didn't move. I'm like, wait. I'm like, wait, no backwards compatibility? You stay here, PlayStation 2.
Uh-huh.
That's what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and that thing has shelf life. That's what that did. Now at this point in time, we bump into the new player into this game, which is the Xbox. On paper, it sounds like a dumb idea. Let me explain. So Microsoft's plan was they should see a large financial potential of having a new console into this range. If you can take that third slot, much like what PlayStation did one generation before, Microsoft wanted to come in with this. The problem is generating and designing and building a console from the ground up is expensive in the R&D department. Like, and I used to own stock in Nintendo. Almost 50% of their business acumen is in R&D. And that's if most companies do maybe 30%. And these are research development companies that do this. 30% of their stuff is in R&D. Nintendo is like, nah, we're going to pour half of it to make sure we can have new games, new peripherals, new things that work, and testing and such for it. So it's ridiculous. And Xbox, however, is owned by Microsoft, which at this point in time has, as we used to call it, crazy Microsoft money. They were the biggest company, bar none, at this point in time. They are basically like, this would cost almost $1 billion to try to build a new console. What do you think, Bill Gates? Let's try it.
I've got some spending cash in my wallet.
I got some spending money at home. I got this.
That's the dream.
Seriously?
Yeah. So Xbox wanted to test to see if there was a valid market for that. Now, what Xbox did, which is kind of genius, is that they wanted to make sure that they had things that were Xbox exclusive. Now, they're marketing for that one, and this is on the back of one big-ass game, Halo. They bought everything, all the rights for Halo. Halo was supposed to be released on the PC before they were like, you know what? You're coming to Xbox now. This is almost like going down the street. You're my cat now.
Master Chief is a cat, just
paid dividends.
Oh yeah, but no, it paid out dividends. So many people wanted Halo that they were willing to buy a new console to play Halo.
Raise your hand if you ever went to a Halo party.
Yeah, of course.
If you've never done a Halo party like that, that is an experience.
I've never played Halo.
We gotta fix it, Liz.
Legit, Halo was one of the only games that ran on the school computers.
Mm-hmm.
Really?
Oh, yeah. So you'd be in, typing class, and I'm typing. Dang it, he got me. I mean, the word got me.
House of the Typing of the Dead.
And it was only the first couple of levels, right? But still, that was enough.
You can run it. You can run the demo.
Enough,
yeah.
When they had these, and Halo parties were a thing, and it was so hard to put together because you got to have 4 TVs, and not regular TVs, a big ass TV, because you need 4 people. You need a screen big enough for everybody to watch what they're doing.
Flat screens did not exist at this time.
You also had to get a specialized system link that would allow you to link the Xboxes together. And you'd have to have, if you want a full Halo party, 4 of these Xboxes. And Xboxes are Xbox huge was the joke, because the size of an Xbox was, what, 3 PlayStation 2s glued together?
I have fairly large hands, and I had trouble using the Xbox original controller.
The Xbox original controller was ridiculously
Dude, it was
big.
Seriously, the size of a freaking grapefruit.
There was a button there. I didn't even touch that button on the side. It was too far off.
Yeah, how could you reach it? You'd have to sojourn to it. You left in the morning. You might get there by the next week if you ran fast enough.
Half the controller was dead to me.
Yeah.
I just couldn't reach it.
It made the 64's controller look usable, which is kind of remarkable.
It looks as a trade. The worst part about it isn't until later of sitting here years after Halo comes out. Oh, that's a flashlight. I've been playing my game in the dark this whole time.
Wait, hold on. There was a flashlight?
There's a flashlight button for Halo. I did not even realize that was a thing.
Can't reach the flashlight of all things.
Oh, man. But if you were in a Halo party, you were sweating bullets, because not only are you in the room with the guy shooting you? He knows that you are there. Funniest story I've ever had was from my Halo party where I'm sitting here with a flag, but I grabbed this flag for capture the flag at the exact same time as this other guy in the room who got the same flag. So all you hear is on every TV echoing flag capture. No one knows whose flag it is.
I do have to admit, like there are a couple of things that have done this, but Halo really does set the pace in a lot of ways for a lot of different things, including the Xbox console, right? Without Halo, there's no Xbox 360, which we'll get to in a little bit. At least I don't think so. But, Red versus Blue, you get people making fan-made TV shows. I think maybe this is a bit of a stretch. Maybe this is a hot take. It's not intended as one, but machinima, I don't think exists without Halo.
No, because Halo's like one of the first machinimas.
Warcraft.
Yeah, very much so.
Warcraft, maybe. I could
Warcraft
see.
machinima is still a thing.
Oh, it is, but I think it was made popular by and large by Halo.
I would argue they helped each other.
Well, okay, I mean,
Because
sure.
they were at the same time, same tech, same idea.
Could be. But I believe that Red vs. Blue actually did, because Red vs. Blue is a much older series than people realize. They didn't, and Rooster Teeth as a company stays around until I think just
3 weeks ago.
Yeah, unfortunately.
So their 21st anniversary.
Pour one out.
I do know that because of the popularity and the success of Red vs. Blue is the reason why Ruby even exists.
Yep.
But yeah, so they ran through a machinima thing for that one for Halo, and there's and arguably, and this is a very, very Dutch argument, because this is a video game turned into a TV show that's aired on YouTube for it. And nowadays we have Fallout just came out by the time anybody sees this recording, like about a month ago. And then you still have other video game based movies that are coming out, and they're starting to get popular on it. And you could argue a case that it's on the backs of Red versus Blue, which is on the back of Halo.
Yeah, we even made our own machinimas at one time. My cousin had a capture card, and we would make our own machinimas. They were terrible. They're lost to time.
Dang it.
But we did it. They existed.
Find them.
I love
Unearth
that.
them.
That's such a cool thing. I think
Now,
it's cool.
I will say, to Dane's point, by far the Halo machinimas were the biggest and the most well known, and became ubiquitous in pop culture.
You know what's weird? Machinima, I think, started with Quake, which we did not mention at all. But I don't think of it, right? I think
you
of.
Will not think. No one thought about it.
Yeah,
No.
I think of Halo, right? And WoW as well. Don't get me wrong. And Warcraft, I'm more invested in than I was Red versus Blue, if I'm being honest. But even I can recognize they hit something with Halo.
Yeah, and what was it? It was so fun. They went to a con and they displayed. At one point, Red vs. Blue was designed to be fully animated, and they had the backing of an anime studio in Japan to do all the animation for it. And when they looked at the numbers and everything for it, they're like, it's kind of pricey for what we need, but also we ran this as a machinima. Let's just keep it as a machinima. And that's what they ran with.
Just kind of thinking about it, I might go so far as to say that without Halo, we don't get things like a Bridge series as popular.
Correct.
Because
because those actors that were and writers that for Red versus Blue did several different series like that.
Everything is Halo.
It's Halo all the way down.
All the way down.
Well,
all the way
Halo's
down.
a circle, so it goes back to Halo.
Oh yeah.
I have found my deity.
Which is also a thing in Halo. So, back to the Halo.
Hey!
Hey! So, at this point, video games and in-game design for these consoles had a threshold. The amount of nostalgia tied with any of these is ridiculous. There is 10 times more to that story, to my Halo story than I have there, which was, by the end of it, everyone is sweating bullets, yelling and cursing at everybody. It is It sounds like we're about to go into a fist fight, but it is the greatest time ever. So these things are picked up for it, and we move on to the 7th generation. It wasn't a matter of who would get there; it was a matter of who would get there first. At this point, video games is now we have a whole industry. We've made sure that we don't make mistakes like we did before. Let's roll with this, okay? Now, what we do at this point is something kind of crazy, which is the second big console war. People would put lines in the sand for this one. So we have coming into the case PlayStation 3. We also have the Xbox 360, and we also have the Nintendo Wii. The reason why people are put their why I say that this is the console war that people put their are holding their ground for. These 3 consoles go in a completely different way for how they're approached. So let's start with the Xbox 360 because technically speaking, that one comes out first. So the Xbox 360 comes out and it integrates with itself, and it was a huge deal for people who got the Xbox 360. It came out, it was a masterpiece of a machine, and it introduced having a hard drive built into your machine. The PlayStation 2 actually had a spot in the back for a hard drive, but it only operated with I think 3 games, and one of them was Operation Raccoon City. It was a Outbreak.
That was PS2. Resident Evil.
That's what I'm talking
Resident Evil Outbreak. Oh.
Yep, Resident Evil Outbreak came out for PS2, but there was an attachment in the back for a hard drive to make that game work right. The game itself was not great. It reached for the stars, could barely get out the parking lot.
I feel like that's not correct, but okay.
That's my slogan.
There was so much it could have done better. Like,
well,
one of the
there's
worst
a
things
lot
about
it could
that
have done better, but I think it actually, like, it did a lot right. But this isn't Resident Evil cast. I'm sorry.
Well, so, like, the guys who designed it, like, put a bunch of weird things on it. Like, for example, you would earn EXP for your avatar and such in there by going through one of the stages in that game. But most people would go through the first stage over and over and over and over again. It was hard to find a lobby in that game that didn't have everyone playing on the first stage. But honestly, Outbreak is the one game I'm saying I would love to have a remake to Outbreak done in a modern text with a whole bunch of stuff that they could have done better now. Now, with that being said, though, the key to this one was PlayStation thought ahead and they wanted to put in a hard drive, but by the time they got to the hard drive issue, they didn't really implement it as well. For the Xbox, the hard drive was an option instead of bringing over a memory card, and they still allowed you to have memory cards. And with that meant that they had a lot of space that they could just have there to keep your data for your stuff, and people would introduce this there. Now, for the Xbox, they were trying out a bunch of new things for it. Probably one of the things that they did at the time was certain games had high definition televisions requirements. It was a problem in when I was going through Dead Rising, because back then I did not have a high definition TV, so I could play Dead Rising. I couldn't read any of the text of Dead Rising.
The text sucked. I agree. I had the same problem.
Yeah, so you had to have a high definition TV in order to read the text. Dead Rising was famous for being the first game that was only made for an HD TV.
What a horrible decision.
Oh.
Like,
it is.
That's a bad choice.
I've covered wars, you know.
No. No, it was so bad because, like, to get some of the best endings, you have to be able to read the dialogue to know where you got to go with this. Because you have to save a survivor. I have accidentally put the survivors in the wrong places and such because I couldn't read the text.
Whoops.
Oh, man.
Oh, what was it? There's a guy in there. I'm starving. I'm starving. I need, and they highlight the text. Food. You are actually, or I think you're not supposed to give him food because he is allergic to food, but I couldn't read the words to say that.
He's allergic to food.
I didn't mean to murder that man. I couldn't read the text.
Actually, it's much worse, but that's not. But that particular scenario is not exactly podcaster friendly for that one. and I'll explain that one later. Um,
The after edits.
GTP after
to
dark.
all of these
Yeah.
guys, not to you guys. If you want to know what that guy is, he has a bandage on his chest. You can find him in the toy store. You have to bring his wife to him, and it does not go well if you cannot read words.
Ooh.
But that's the thing. They had games that they're like, hey, you know how nobody here owns a high definition TV? If you want to play some of these newer games, you're gonna want a high definition TV.
Go get one.
With the 360, it's really interesting. It is sort of billed as as you mentioned, the approach was different than the other two. They're all kind of built uniquely, but it was sort of billed as like a. I hesitate to use the word social media because that wasn't really in the vernacular at the time, but it is sort of billed as like a social media console. You know, it
Yeah.
was very much all about the connectivity, being online, being together with your friends, creating your own avatar. Were
And
you know,
showing
huge
your
things.
achievements.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's true.
This is where the achievement system in Xbox Live comes by. You would go, you could register your friends to have your friends hang out with you. And so it was like, hey, you could drop a line and say, hey, you guys want to play a game tonight? Sure. But they get to see your avatar. They got to see what many points that you have. They got to see what achievements you have in a game. And if they're friendly, they're like, I'll help you get this new achievement. Or they'll mock you. Mock you to the end of your days.
I do kind of remember being like, giving a shit what my achievement score was at one point.
Yeah.
Which sounds like the stupidest thing in the world to me now. But it was a thing, you know? Like, oh, you only have 13,000? Like, what's the matter, man? You just suck at video games?
I remember being able to dress up your avatar, and
Yeah.
no one will guess what my avatar was dressed as.
Alan
Resident
Wake.
Evil character.
It's Alan Wake adjacent.
I was gonna say Alan Wake.
It's Mr. Scratch from Alan Wake.
Oh, very nice.
Amazing.
You are
I remember-
on
I
brand.
am nothing if not predictable.
Mine was Snow from Final Fantasy 13.
Oh, mine was lightning for a hot
Nice.
second, but when I saw they had the Mr. Scratch outfit, I was like, oh, obviously.
When Fallout 3 came
I-
out, mine was a Fault Dweller.
Nice.
Oh,
Nice.
that's cool.
To no one's surprise.
To no one's surprise, mine wore a tuxedo. Had a little top hat.
Aw.
You've always been fancy.
Always been fancy.
Yeah, he's the fanciest.
I love that.
It must be the fanciness.
But speaking of like the community aspect of it, I will never get over this. Netflix had an app for the Xbox 360, part of the Xbox Live system, where if you wanted to watch movies with your friends, you logged into the app and it would bring you to a little movie theater, and your avatar would pop up, and you could go and you could sit in the theater with all your friends in the little Xbox party,
Yeah, and they
and
had
you could
little
watch the
buttons.
movie.
I am
I
about
They had
know-
little buttons. You could emote.
What?
You could emote to the
I'm
movie.
about to go
I not
hook up my 360 again and
I not once was ever invited to do that. I didn't know. That's incredible.
They trashed it. I feel like after a year they stopped supporting that feature and
Oh,
it went
dang.
away.
that's
Aw.
stupid.
But you could watch movies with your friends in a little theater.
My
That's so
favorite
cool.
thing,
So cool.
because I'm a trivia guy nerd, they had 1 versus 100, which later became a TV game show, but they had an actual
oh yeah.
1 versus 100. So you would go in there, and you and 100
Mhm.
people would be playing this quiz game for legit Xbox cash points. Because
Was that the first Battle Royale?
Yep. I was gonna say the first battle royale.
Yep.
Oh my god.
That's rad.
I made it pretty far up once, but you see a little avatar go, "Yay, I'm here." 30 people get knocked out in the first round.
Mhm.
You're like, "You're still in? Okay, we're gonna make this harder." Bam, people are getting knocked out left and right, and when it got closer and closer, you started seeing everybody's call signs and such. So you knew the guy who was at the top of the heap.
Epic Gamer 69. Damn it. Again. Can't beat this guy.
But speaking of their social aspect, the big games that were out for the Xbox, Call of Duty. Call of Duty,
Mm.
and there were so many shooters for the Xbox 360, and that is by design. What they had when the Xbox Live was going live and such, at some point they made it a requirement to have high-speed internet data. We don't even consider that as high speed anymore, a standard issue, but back then it was pulling. They were basically asking all the gamers who are with Xbox to pull teeth because it wouldn't work with a lower tread.
You need more bandwidth.
You needed all that bandwidth for the Xbox Live for that. And it was a crazy gamble, and people bumped into it because that was the only way that was how you ended up with these multiplayer shooters for it. Amongst all the other options like Netflix and these live games and Xbox Live and the ability to download DLC, and the Xbox was the innovator for most of these. Almost all of it, actually, now that I think about it.
Don't forget Rock Band.
And Rock Band. I have personally blew
What?
$4,000 on Rock Band.
What?
I'm aware, I think I might have accidentally said I personally blown a Rock Band.
Well,
Who hasn't?
$4 grand Rock Band.
Which rock band? You had to pick one.
Clearly, you have enough to spend $4,000. You gotta
After dark.
You gotta get that money on there.
That's VIP for sure.
Remember, go to Patreon to turn your money into handheld, and then go to Leo.
Handhelds
Stage
and
pass.
dirty talk.
Oh,
Yeah, that was a terrible pause.
Spice is gonna ruin me.
why do you invite me to these? You know how they're gonna go.
Oh, really? I don't know that this is exactly how that's gonna go down.
Leo's
mean,
making a note,
I
never
feel like you
again.
should at this point. How many years have we known each other?
Oh yeah, no, I knew
Yeah.
the.
Yeah, you should know.
But okay, so like back to the subject of that. No, but Rock Band came out, and you would download the songs for Rock Band, and I didn't find out until recently Rock Band is still going with downloadable content.
Really?
How?
No, I just bumped into a Wikipedia article about Rock Band because I was looking for one song, which is a remake of a remake, which makes no sense. It's called Fire. I can't remember the name of the original artist because it's really, really long. It's something like The Strange Tale of Arthur, and it keeps going for that. All I remember is the opening lyric to that is, "I am the god of hellfire, and I bring you fire."
I could Google it and
Legit.
find out what song that is.
Yeah,
Was
but the
Ashwood on
remake to
it?
that one, because they didn't have the original on Rock Band, they had some techno remake mix for it.
The
So this is
Crazy
like-
World of Arthur Brown.
That's the name.
Amazing. This is like how Just Dance is still pressing new discs for the Wii
Yeah.
every year.
Dude,
Every year.
They just do.
there's some things that just hold on for a really long time.
Mhm.
PS2 held on for so long that like I think it was, so I worked at GameStop from 2010 to 2014, and I want to say it was like 2013 or 12 that they actually finally stopped pressing PS2 games.
Yeah, 6th gen goes from
I
98 to 2013, and most of that's the PlayStation.
Dang. That was the party rock era. Let's go back.
And it was mostly it was kept alive for the sports games.
Yeah, for the 7th generation, so the one we're talking about here, because of how timelines work when they do the manufacturing, it starts back in 2005. It doesn't end until 2017.
Oh dang. Okay, so I didn't.
It's got the biggest
I
year
wasn't
gap.
at
All right.
I wasn't at GameStop. I was at GameStop when GameStop stopped carrying them, I guess.
Yeah.
GameStop stopped games.
Yeah.
So anyway, but Rock Band was an experience, and if you ever got the chance, and I did because I got everything, it's in the back, it's ready to go. But
Fire it up.
Leo got a brand new sound system literally to play Rock Band, and not once have we.
Ash, get over here. We got
Let's go.
we got Rock Band.
I have a D.
that is the second time I bought and installed an entire stereo system for Rock Band, because when it first came out, I invested into that, and I mean invested. I have the drum set, and then I got the drum and to go with that drum set kit, I also got the drummer's chair, so that way they could be low to the ground for that drummer. Got the bass, the guitar, 3 mic stands to go with the microphones, because the coolest one was when Rock Band Beatles comes out, because they introduce harmonies, so you can have 3-part singers on that one. And Rock Band 3 introduced the keyboard, which I do ideally think that Rock Band 3 was the best of all the series because it allowed you to integrate all of that.
I feel like we needed the keytar.
You had what started as a 4-player game to a 7-player game.
I have Dance Dance Revolution and the
Yeah,
DDR pad.
that's not.
I'm just
no.
saying, we can put the
When's
sound
the-
system to use that way too.
When's the music games podcast coming out?
No kidding.
That's...
I would talk about Elite Beat Agents, but that is a handheld only game, so can't talk about it.
It's true.
What if it's the music-based podcast
Yeah, but
episode? Because that would be a
that's not
different
on
episode.
this
But
episode.
Leo
this one.
doesn't like handhelds.
That's not on this podcast.
That's why you have to give him money.
All right, Leo, here's my card.
Anyway. But no, so like Xbox really leaned into their multiplayer. That was their big thing on it. Now, granted, Xbox also did a thing that everyone knew. It's one of those like publicly secret things. Publicly, they built up a bunch of multiplayer games, but everyone knew in secret you had to buy your own Xbox to get it to play. They did, even though the games were designed with a localization on it, they rarely used it because that way they could sell to Xbox.
You know what games have couch co-op on the 360? Borderlands and
oh yeah,
Left 4 Dead and Resident Evil 5 and 6.
We put so many hours into Left 4 Dead. We would go home and like 4, 5, 6 hours straight every single day after school.
Yeah,
you just play No Mercy. I could still see No Mercy the entire map through my brain.
Yeah,
so good.
So I know we haven't touched the Wii yet.
We're about
but
to.
Out of curiosity,
if I'm blowing a rock band, you're touching that
I'm gonna do a 360 and walk away.
Yeah, wait, you're walking right into it that way.
You walk away.
So
of this era, of this era of gaming, what system does everyone think they played the most?
Between the 360, the PS3, and
the Wii. Yeah.
360.
Yeah, 360. Because like I'm a Nintendo like ride or die girl. Like my room is filled with amiibos.
Mm-hmm.
But 360 is still one of my favorite systems because like it was like all the good memories of like hanging out with friends after class or going over for impromptu Halo and Rock Band nights.
Mm-hmm.
It just like it worked that it built its whole identity off this like multiplayer like get with your friends. It did what the Wii couldn't. Well, it did what the Wii did for retirement homes. Let me reiterate that.
Well, We'll get to the Wii in a second because I want to stop by the PlayStation 3 first.
The Wii was one where I had a lot of.
We don't need that.
I had a lot of fun with the Wii because I still played my 360 infinitely more before I started migrating to PlayStation or back to PlayStation, I guess. But the Wii, I put so many hours into Trauma Center Second Opinion. I still love that. I still have all 3 Trauma Center games on Wii in my other room. And then Resident Evil Darkside Chronicles and Umbrella Chronicles. My cousin and I, we were just poor college kids. And on the weekends, we had school Monday through Friday. And I would work Saturday and Sunday. Just like part-time, probably like 5 or 6 hours those days. But like Thursday afternoon, my cousin and I would get out of school. We'd go to Blockbuster and we would rent. This was like 2007-ish, and we would rent Darkside Chronicles. And the number of times we rented it, we should have bought it, but we only had the money to rent at the time. We put so many hours into that and Darkside Chronicles, and I still have really good memories of that, but most of my time went to
I do find it really interesting. You know, most of the people I know, so I'm a PlayStation and Nintendo guy myself in terms of consoles. I did not care much for the original Xbox, and I didn't care much for the Xbox One to present. But most people I know typically went PlayStation 2 and GameCube. Like, I feel like Sony and Nintendo are pretty, like, they're doing different things most of the time, right? If you look at the Wii and you look at the PS3, they're totally different. If you look at the N64 and you look at the PlayStation, completely different. The GameCube, you know, yada, yada, yada. And so, like, I feel like, so, you know, you had to choose between Sony and Microsoft, but then you could also have Nintendo as a treat. But most of the people I know who were, you know, Sony fans typically did not go PlayStation 3. They typically went Xbox 360.
I ended up going to PlayStation 3, like I had a PlayStation 3, but I aired more on the side of the 360. But I remember starting to migrate to my PS3 right about the time Dragon's Dogma came out, because my mom was my mom was playing Dragon's Dogma, but because she was a morning person and I was a night person, she would play it in the morning and during the day, and then she would give her copy to me and I would play it at night. And then I would put it on her desk so that she had it for the following morning. And so I ended up playing my PS3. And then once you see that little achievement pop, you're like, I need more of that. I need that pop of serotonin telling me I did something. And then I started finding like the PlayStation exclusives, which I ended up playing. Well, no, I did also play a lot of Uncharted on my PlayStation.
Well, the PlayStation definitely had some good games.
Yeah, but for being somebody who wasn't into like the online multiplayer shooter games, I put a hell of a lot of hours into my 360, and then played my PS3 mostly for the exclusives, and then for Dragon's Dogma.
See, that makes sense. Here's why. The Xbox will has what we forget, and most people do. Even though we talk about these three consoles at the same time because of its generation, the Xbox was out, 360 was out for a year and a half before, and they got any new challengers. So it had it beat out everybody else on there. Now, when the PlayStation 3 comes up, what the PlayStation 3 does better than the Xbox 360 did was RPGs.
Yes.
It had, and more art. It was designed to handle a larger graphical load than the Xbox 360. If the Xbox 360 was your blue-collared worker, this one is your Renaissance painter.
I have one caveat on that, though.
Yeah.
Because to me, at least, it felt like the PS3 was built around JRPGs.
Correct.
Like, if you're a Final Fantasy kid, you eventually got a PS3. But the Xbox had the Western RPGs.
Correct.
Where you got Elder Scrolls, Skyrim, Fable, and all the crimes I committed there. Like
Microsoft also got Alan Wake exclusive.
I was about to ask. Not that. That's very good, though. I was about to ask if Skyrim really came out on the 360 first.
Yes.
Because I have forgotten. It has come out so many times that I don't remember where it started. We've always had Skyrim. Skyrim has always been at this point.
Skyrim has been and will always be.
Yeah, you guys remember playing it on the Nintendo Entertainment System? It was great.
Something?
God, seriously.
About Skyrim?
I've never played Skyrim.
Yeah?
Well, that's fine.
That's okay.
Well,
I still
Liz,
It's okay, it'll come out this year.
You've always played Skyrim.
You're right. Schrodinger's Skyrim.
You've never
not played Skyrim.
Yeah, you've never not been here.
Schrodinger's Dragonborn.
I see you're finally awake.
Now Spice is right though. Western RPGs started coming out for the Xbox first because that's how they designed it, and especially with Bethesda being the big holder on that. With what, Skyrim, which everyone's played.
You know, I think I've heard of that game, Skyrim.
But if you were a JRPG fan, so Final Fantasy,
Leo can think of one.
It's only Final Fantasy. It all goes down to Final Fantasy. That is the only JRPG to ever exist, to ever come, to ever go.
Infinite, Infinite Undiscovery. What was the one?
Infinite Undiscovery is great.
Was it
Eternal Sonata, but that was released on both 360 and PS3.
Stories?
It counts if the PlayStation
Radiant
had
Story
it first.
Histories was
What's the one?
DS.
What's the one that was always alongside Infinite Undiscovery that also had a really stupid name?
It's not Triangle Strategy. That came out later.
No, that's way
Much
too recent.
later.
No, oh my god, I almost had it. It's
Was it PS3?
360. Might have been on PS3, but I remember playing it for 360. I hated it because it was like one of the last games I played that utilized save points with no autosaves. And I was in a dungeon and I lost like 2 hours of progress because it was so hard to like backtrack out of the dungeon. It was a winding dungeon and it was annoying. Tried to backtrack out of it, and then I got to there's a door with a save point on the other side of it. And I was like, oh my God, I have to open this door. And to open the door, you have to find various monsters and lure them to the door so that they perform some kind of weird ritual to open the door. And I did that. But then right before you go through the door, you get into a huge fight. And I died and I lost all the progress. And I was so mad.
Was it Last Remnant?
Last Remnant. And I think,
Yeah,
yes.
that was a Squeenix, wasn't it?
No. And I
That was
think
a
it might
Squeenix,
have been
yeah.
Infinite Undiscovery that was that one, because I liked the Last Remnant.
One thing I think is kind of interesting about the games released on the PlayStation 3 is that, and maybe this is a hot take because I do love some of these games, but a lot of the hallmarks of the JRPG genre released games in this time that weren't great or weren't well received, right? So I'm a Final Fantasy 13 apologist, and I will admit that
Same.
wholeheartedly. I love that game, but I understand it's not very well received in terms of Final Fantasy. The Tales of series, you had Tales of Grace, you had Tales of Xillia and Xillia 2, and none of those three, like I think Tales of Vesperia in Japan and Tales of Symphonia, the remake for the PS3, were better received than these new Tales games, right? That had come out. Eternal Sonata was mentioned. Star Ocean, I think, had one at the
Star Ocean
time,
was on the.
Star Ocean had one.
but I don't think it was that well received.
No, it was
Like-
not.
Disgaea 3, Disgaea 4 definitely came out in this era, also not very well received. Like
It was not great.
it wasn't.
How did you go after Disgaea 2? Like, they should have stopped there.
Nier, which
Hot
did
take.
so bad they reinvented it and act like
Yep.
the first game doesn't exist. Like,
Oh, Dark Souls 1 and 2 was on
Yeah.
360.
yeah, that's true. And there are some
If
absolute
that-
bangers, right? Dark Souls 2, they re-released Demon Souls for it. Deus Ex, I think, had one that was really well received.
Oh,
Dragon's Dogma was mentioned.
Sorry. Deus Ex,
Sure.
Human Revolution.
Yeah. And so like there are definitely some good games, but from the powerhouses of the industry, kind of flops across the board. Not that like Tales of Graces was a fun enough game, Tales of Xillia was a fun enough game, but comparatively to like Tales of Vesperia and Tales of Symphonia, not as good, I
Final
would argue.
Fantasy Type 0. I think
Yeah.
what it
Mm.
was
Ugh.
is this is like the peak of the JRPG machine,
Yes.
where
Yeah. This is where
everyone and their cat has a JRPG coming out.
So that makes sense because at this point, and there's going to be a retrospective on RPGs, and we'll get to this because at this point we start seeing a new similar brand to RPGs because this is why Skyrim ends up becoming big. It's a first-person shooter RPG as a first-person shooter. So you would play it for the action, and the action doesn't stop. Whereas in a traditional JRPG, you could wait a turn, you move on there, and there's always things that they have to revamp for it because if you follow Square Enix's logic on that, I mean, we get to the remake of Final Fantasy VII, which is amazing, but you don't feel that same slowdown as you did with waiting your turn and such for it. But then there's still traditionalists that want that type of game. But at this point in time, we're talking Skyrim and Fallout and other 3D RPGs because the 3D RPGs have existed before, like in the PlayStation era. They
Final
were
Fantasy
not
7,
good.
maybe.
What?
I've heard that's pretty okay.
What was it?
You guys hear something?
Final
No.
Fantasy 7 might be a good game that was 3D.
Is that-
3D first-person shooter, Dane.
You said 3D. You said
No.
3D, sir. Yes, you did.
If you play only
I will
as
see you in
Barret-
post. I will see you in post.
I'll send that to you. No, it's
Please
a
do.
first-person shooter because it's going to because the two big RPGs that are coming out, Skyrim and Fallout 3 at this point is also this is when Fallout ends up hitting the bit.
There's a Cerberus.
That was PS2.
I know what I
Was that
said.
PSP?
No, it was,
As well.
Crisis Core was PSP.
PSP.
Oh.
Which wasn't a shooter either.
Wait, sorry, that's a handheld.
Which
I
also
can't bring
wasn't
that
a
up.
shooter. But this is the tail time where the traditional JRPG starts falling off.
And I think that makes a lot of sense, right? When you look at the PS3, right, it was touted as this like JRPG console, as Spice mentioned.
Mhm.
And if the JRPGs weren't hitting, and there were alternatives that were seen as just as good or better, for the 360, it makes sense that people would migrate away from the machine specifically for playing JRPGs.
Yeah.
If they're not giving that same value or whatever.
Now, which is funny because the PlayStation 3 did have a couple of different advantages that the Xbox 360 did not. One, its draw distance, its graphics system was designed better in its video card system than the Xbox was. Two, it worked. The Xbox 360 had a 50-50 shot that it was going to fail on you.
You know what's wild? I owned 3, but not because of a Red Ring of Death or any technical issue. I just traded them in and upgraded.
Pretty sure mine still works.
Yeah,
mine
like
didn't. Mine
died. Did you Red Ring?
I Red Ring twice.
Dang!
Oh.
You must have gotten mine then.
I red ringed once, but now I have the Star Wars 360 and it still works. I mostly now have it for Shadows of the Damned, but I also
Such a good game.
I have such a
It was in several different gaming magazines about the Xbox 360 because if you touted the statistics for how many of them got red ringed, you basically, once you bought a new Xbox 360 from the shelf, you had a 50-50 shot of that red ringing.
I should buy a lottery ticket.
It is ridiculous how
Did yours Red Ring, Ashwood?
Oh yeah, it was one of the most terrifying days of my life.
Oh
No.
Was a day that it red ringed,
Oh, God,
and I had to wait 2 months to get a new one.
Oh, that sucks.
I got mine red ringed, and this is gonna be so shitty of me to reveal, but I got mine working.
What? Put a sandwich inside the NES?
No, I mean yes, but not this
That's
time.
right.
I feel like every console episode with Liz is just like, here's some tea about some shitty things that happened.
Here's my list of crimes.
Yeah.
I got my 360 to work just well enough that I could trade it in so that I could put that money towards the Star Wars one.
Very nice.
There's some little orphan boy whose family scraped together all of their savings and was like, here you go, Jebediah, for your birthday. And he's like, oh boy, it's 360. I've always wanted one of these. And then
it got shipped to Europe?
It 100%ed.
It also
100%
went back
red ring.
in time.
Oh, goody, Mama. I've always wanted a 360.
So over time, like GDP is just turning into like Liz's confession box. We don't know when the lore drop of what Liz has done will happen, but
sometimes
we will get it.
Things I don't even remember doing until we're talking about them, and I'm like, oh yeah, that I do remember doing that.
In hindsight, right, I would not have wanted any of my 360s to red ring on me, and they didn't, so neener, I guess. But at the same time, there is a part of me that, like, is a little bummed it did, because, like, so many people have this, like, connective tissue where they're like, oh, yeah, it sucked. It was the worst day of my life. Like, it was terrible. And I'm over here like, yeah, totally, man.
Sounds like it.
Sure.
I got my own personal Xbox so late in the game. I think by that point they had started releasing the newer versions of 360 that didn't red ring as often.
That's what the Star Wars one was.
I'm scared to hook up mine from the garage again to see if maybe the curse has taken hold.
Yeah.
How else am I gonna play Eternal Sonata?
I find it odd
Just
that
play that.
if you had a nickel for every time you had a red ring, you'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it's happened twice.
Yeah.
I only got
There's
one.
some people, what is it? Because I got my own Xbox 360. My brother got his own Xbox 360. Day one, red ring. Day one. Red ring.
No.
The replacement also red ringed. The replacement for that replacement. There was a point where he would, because we had there was a GameStop up the street. There was a point that he would put that GameStop let him put money down to, he reserved a couple of games, but he was in there every couple of weeks or so because he's having to get his Xbox 360 replaced, and he treated it like it was a casual Tuesday.
Oh my goodness.
Get him an old priest, a young priest, a mid priest, a midwife. I don't care. Like
a mid boss.
That's a curse.
That was my PS2.
After the 5th one had stopped doing that. But by
Good.
then,
5th time's the charm, as they say.
But the thing was that he would the money he was saving around for a bunch of games, like, you know what, I'm gonna get a PlayStation 3.
Fair at that point.
So, like, you know, a lot of people own the Xbox 360. The PlayStation 3, however, worked. You had a it didn't fail. You didn't have that. It was kind of odds.
There were no games for it, but they worked.
Oh my gosh.
Actually, no, that's more around the Wii. Which let's talk about the Wii.
The Wii had a
hey.
gazillion games. What are you talking
And it was built
about?
different, okay?
Mhm.
You know what? Fun fact. Actually, unless Spice, you want to take this. I learned it from you.
I love the Wii.
That's
So,
not a fact.
up until this year, they have released a Just Dance every year for the
Oh
Wii.
my gosh.
There is a Just Dance 2024, I think. There's at least a 2023, this I know, for the Wii.
That's amazing.
So I work in a library system, right?
Mhm.
And we very quietly got rid of all of our 3DS games because they weren't circulating anymore. We very quietly got rid of our PS3 collection because they weren't circulating anymore. We are still buying new pressings of Wii games because they are still. It's not just Jam.
Just Dance.
Just
Do that
jam.
again. It's not just Dance. We are having to source and buy new copies of things like the Donkey Kong, the Konga game, or
Konga.
like all these others that we have to keep adding back to our collection because the Wii is still just going.
Man, good for the Wii. That's got some good
Yeah.
staying power. I love the Wii.
But
I do
every
too.
August we get brand new Just Dances, and that hold list is a mile long for both like the Wii and like I don't think the Wii U one we get, but like Wii and Switch gets so many copies.
Yeah, so it looks like the 2024 one doesn't have a Wii pressing that I could find, but 2023
Yeah.
does.
Yeah, 2023
I need
definitely
to go to
does.
the library and rent Just Dance for the Switch
Yeah.
because I have been
Yes.
wanting to play it, and I've been trying to bully Leo into it, and he's like, "Yeah, once you can get it," and I'm like, "Don't look at me and my
Liz,
poor
come visit
college
me.
studentness."
Everyone, check out your local library. It's incredible.
Can I
For
get
real.
it through Libby?
Doubtful.
You can get it through me.
But that doesn't work for everybody. Go to your local library. It's free. It's a great resource.
I love my
Or-
You're
library.
already paying towards it technically.
Or GTP faithful, hit up Spice and Rose. Let them know what you want from their library.
Only if you sign up for the Patreon and then you say you got the
The spice tier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hand delivered.
But also Libby is amazing.
This is a joke for legal purposes.
For legal purposes, it's actually a joke. But here's the thing with the Wii.
No, I'm
the
sorry.
Wii-
Somebody is going to join our Patreon and be like, I want my handheld console. I want my I want my library books delivered directly from Spice. What else?
I want my rock band.
It's my money and I need it now.
And that's why it's not on the tiers officially.
Wait,
Mm,
Spice tier.
Secret
when?
tier. It's
Click
like a
buy
secret
now.
menu.
Click
If you know, you know.
Anyway.
I'm sorry.
No, you're not.
So back to the subject at hand, the Wii. So the Wii and its marketing design was honestly if the Xbox 360 was supposed to go with the hardcore gamers, the PlayStation was supposed to go with the more arts filled and loyal and RPG loyalist gamers.
Weebs.
Yep. Ironically, the weebs are not with the Wii. Anyway, however, the Wii was target audience was everyone else. It was literally designed so anyone who's never played a game could pick up the controller.
And it's so
Do you like bowling? We got bowling.
it's fun because
Mhm.
like it was kind of initially touted as like a family console, and then after a while they were like, okay, now we bring on the rated R games, and then you would get like House of the Dead and Resident Evil and Splatterhouse, I think, was on the Wii, and
Mhm.
How was it? But it's what is it? It's like one of the most violent games of all time.
Slaughterhouse?
is on the Wii.
Manhunt
Manhunt
was
thank
on
you.
the Wii.
Manhunt
but
2.
I
It was
thought
the sequel.
Splatterhouse was. I know House of the Dead was though.
Red Steel was a launch title in which you cut people up with a katana.
Yes,
Yeah.
Splatterhouse.
It was
I
incredible.
remember Red Steel.
It was so much fun.
Also, remember all the commercials of just we would like to play?
Yep.
Mhm.
That and the Snap, man, are going down in
The
history.
Nintendo's-
The
yeah,
Switch, the
the
Switch
Switch
Snap.
You can get Splatterhouse on the Switch right now.
That's funny. I will tell one anecdote about the Wii, or at least one anecdote about the Wii, because I feel like this shows what kind of like where I was in my life, I guess. A bunch of friends and I literally put a tent up outside Best Buy the Wednesday before the release.
Oh, I think we remember this from the last console episode
Mm-hmm.
because I was in awe.
Yeah, we literally like slept outside of Best Buy, and it was incredible. We were first in line. It was me and two other friends of mine, and it was, I mean, honestly, like one of the coolest things I've ever done. You know, like as sad as that is to say, I guess.
You know what that's really
It's a
good
moment.
preparation for, though?
Hmm.
Hall H at San Diego Comic-Con.
There you go.
I love those memes every year that come out like 2 weeks beforehand or whatever that are like, first in line for Hall H at San Diego Comic-Con. It's like, nope, you're probably gonna need to line up the first 2 weeks or like 2 weeks in advance.
Liz, you know I can't afford Comic-Con tickets.
Dude, no one can. Anyway.
Your hope is to go to a lame con at where they're gonna have San Diego Comic-Con
Yeah.
and hope they build the con around you.
I'm outside Hall H just pressing my face to the window.
You're like,
I see the people lining up. It's the memes in real life. Papa, the Xbox 360 people are here. Surely this one won't red
Are
ring.
these like sad Victorian time travelers that have fallen through a 360 wormhole created by Liz's grand scheme at the Red Ring of Death actually summoned them?
I did not
Who
realize.
also happen to be going to San Diego Comic Con.
I mean, they're here now. They may as well.
Yeah, I definitely didn't realize what I started with that, with my 360.
I mean, think about how much their money has grown since the Victorian era because of inflation and appreciation.
They show up with like 2 silver coins and everyone's like, oh my god, you have like $400
$5
million.
You can buy a yacht with that.
Mama,
But no,
what
we
is
want
a-
the 360.
Yes, one that doesn't
Just
red
want one
ring,
that works.
preferably.
Mama,
Jebediah is going to be so disappointed this year.
Mama, what is
This
a...
one has Liz etched in the side. Have you met Liz?
Liz, givers of 360s.
Mama, what is a yacht?
Yeah.
All praise the Liz for giving us this bounty that is the 360.
They don't have the scarlet fever here. It's the best thing that ever happened to us. Life's gonna be different now.
I don't know if any of this is going to make it into the episode, but if it doesn't, I am so stoked to see the blooper reel.
Scarlet Fever is another great name for Red Ring.
The Scarlet Fever, yo!
My Xbox came down with the scarlet fever the other day.
My PlayStation's got the black lung.
It's in a coal mine.
Because it's a workhorse.
Yeah.
Please don't kill Ash.
By the way, funniest, dumbest joke I've ever heard of, which is in the show Friends, is this. Because one of the characters is about to be a surrogate mother to somebody, Phoebe, but she wants to be a surrogate mother, and somebody goes up and asks and tells Chandler, goes, Chandler, Phoebe is going to give someone the greatest gift of all time, a PlayStation 2.
Yeah.
And he goes, no, a baby and a PlayStation 2.
Yeah, if I got a baby and not a
Sweeten that pot.
PlayStation 2, I would feel cheated.
You know who else felt cheated?
Jedediah.
Jebediah.
Jebediah worked on the fields all day and all night, but he could not raise the money at the capital to get himself the Xbox 360,
And Leo turned into a 1930s lawyer.
and had to settle for yet another Wii in the back.
Your Honor, my client. Will you see my client? I said my client. He purchased.
Back to the subject at hand, though.
Yes, indeed.
So speaking of, this actually kind of relate with Jebediah's problem, because here's the thing: the Wii was price pointed was $100 less than all the other consoles. Like I think, and it was you could get a Wii for $150.
Just didn't have the
day one.
performance power, that's all.
Oh, he did not. It was not good.
But it
Didn't
had
need
a
it.
waggle Wiimote.
Yeah.
Didn't need it.
Which they also had to upgrade after a while.
Yeah.
Oh, I want to tell this one real quick. Also, funniest thing is Weird Al Yankovic having an interaction with, of all people, why can't I think of his name? The guy who's not Matt Stone, the other, Trey Parker. He got invited to Trey Parker's house, asked if he's like, oh man, Trey Parker, you have the Wii? Yeah, you want to play it? Sure. Throws the Wii into the TV.
Actually threw the Wiimote.
Weird Al
Yeah.
Yankovic just broke the TV of Trey
He
Parker.
had this Wiimote and was like, whoops, didn't use the wrist strap.
Wow.
How many TVs died, fell victim to the Wiimote?
Then there used to be a YouTube collection of videos of
Oh,
people
I'm
who accidentally
sure.
lost the Wii into
My
a
parents used to
remote.
fear for their TV when I would play bowling because I would actually like bum rush the TV while or tennis. It was with tennis because I would be like and actually go for the TV, and my parents were like, no, you don't have to do that. I was like, but it feels so real.
Like, the TV problem got so bad. There was a point in time where, and I could be wrong. Feel free to fact check on me. I can't talk tonight. Look
check.
it up. Take a look
Google
into the
it.
book. But I'm pretty sure there was a point in
Read
time
a book.
where Nintendo was like, okay, hey, sign up here and we'll send you free straps
100%. They
to
did
put
that.
around. Like,
No, that was a legit
because
thing.
I think because
it was like a campaign. Like, they couldn't handle it anymore.
I think that
Okay.
the Wii came with wrist straps at first, or did it not? And they ended up
Yes.
having to.
No, it
It
did.
did.
It did.
No,
Did.
They upgraded them.
They were stronger, so they were a stronger connection point and then stronger fabric as well.
Yeah, because
And
I
they're
think the
like,
original
please
was
God,
like,
wear it.
yeah, they've had signs up and everything. But no, you would, if you weren't paying attention, you could easily huck that Wii into something.
I will say, Wiimote problems and exclusivity issues that the Wii had aside,
Solid console.
what companies, or the rest of the companies that we're talking about here, Microsoft and Sony, decided they're doing motion gaming, so we have to as well.
PlayStation
Because
Move.
they innovated enough and tapped into a market that the rest of these companies were like, holy crap,
Oh yeah,
get the Kinect
the
going.
PlayStation.
Where's
Move.
that at? Get the PlayStation Move. Where's that
By
at?
the way,
They're still making games for the Wii.
the PlayStation Move controllers is what I played Beat Saber with. That's it. That's all I use them for.
PlayStation Move controller always,
It looks a certain way for sure.
it looks a certain way. Yeah. Yeah.
What? Like that? Don't worry, it's just as useful. You know, like the Shake Weight.
Yeah.
Yeah. It looked like
exactly.
Hitachi made it. It's the problem.
Say what you will about the Wii and its issues, because there are some issues. I can
Oh, yeah.
acknowledge that. But like it innovated so hard and so differently that the big two of the big three were like,
We
oh
gotta get in
dang,
on that.
we gotta do that. And then they did it poorly.
They
Oh
did it
my
for
god,
it.
I remember.
But they tried their best.
I remember playing a game on the Kinect. It was my first time playing the Kinect. It was at my friend's house, and it was a horror game. I think it was like one of the first horror games that came out for the Kinect, and it
Oh yeah,
played
it was not good.
so badly. It was like Edge of Insanity or something like that. And I was like, because it would be like you have to like lean forward to move forward, and you have to like lean back to dodge, and and I played for a few hours. I got so frustrated, and my friend would like backseat game, but then also laugh when I couldn't do things right. And I'm like, girl, I'm gonna throw your Kinect at your TV because this game is so frustrating. This is not a skill issue. This is a developer issue. And
How many actual family feuds started because of motion controls?
God, well, and it was just specifically this game on the Kinect, and then I went home like really frustrated because my friend would not stop laughing at me, and I was like, "Girl, we're this close to not being friends anymore," because I was so frustrated. And then, not really, but I mean, I was frustrated, but I wasn't gonna break friendships with her. But then the next day, I was the sorest I had ever been in my life. I woke up and was like, that game sucks. What game was that? Did anybody look that up? I want to say it was like Edge of Insanity or something like that.
Oh, a second. But
I'll do it.
But yeah, no, that's the target audience of the Wii, is to basically try to make it so that way is if you have hand motion, almost anybody can do hand
Rise of
motions
Nightmares.
of some sort.
Can anyone
Oh
do hand-
yeah, Rise of Nightmares. It was not good.
Story was stupid.
Did you ever beat it?
No, I got mad at it, and after I left my friend's house, I went home and Wikipedia'd the ending, and then was like, I'm so glad I didn't finish it. So disappointed in it.
Dane's right. The innovation for that was so major that everyone wanted to be on board. No one did it well. but everyone wanted to be on board.
The Wii did it well.
I think the Wii, by the end of it, was kind of a weird joke. We have this motion game that anybody can play in the Wii. As long as it's Wii Sports.
Yeah.
Wii Sports is also
I mean,
really fun.
When you've made perfection, what more do you need?
Yeah, and also like the Switch move controls, like all they do, it's like a staple now. Like they've just built, they figured out how to do move controls really well, and we're like, okay, well, let's keep doing it. Okay.
Well, they
Okay.
really haven't had a single system, handheld or home, since the Wii that did not have some sort of motion control involved to it.
Yeah.
That is true. What is it? But like, the problem with the Wii ended up being shovelware.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of garbage on that console too.
Yeah, there's a
Okay.
reason why it's called shovelware, because people are shoveling in it. Because
Is that
what is
why
it?
it's called that?
Yeah,
Oh,
because it's all
I
shoveled
never
in there.
knew.
I thought I was named after Shovel Knight.
But that's a good game.
I will say though,
That's a good game.
it's a really good game.
game.
The Wii shop music, second
Bangers.
to none.
Dude, yeah, sorry, but the Wii menu music and stuff, so good.
Yeah.
So, okay, here's the thing. The console war for this era was such a fever pitch that we got the best out of each of these systems. And part of that came down to the customization of your system. The fact that we talked earlier about like the avatars you could have, both in the 360, where Ash was talking about having like your own little avatar watching movies with friends.
Oh,
The Mii's really popped
Mii's
off
are right.
for Nintendo.
Yeah.
I don't think PlayStation really had any sort of customization like that.
no.
But you had custom themes. You had shop music. It felt fun to open your console.
Yeah, I have the Kingdom Hearts theme on my PS3, and I'm so bummed that the PS4 and like I couldn't use my Kingdom Hearts theme on my PS4. But
Yeah.
now
I
like the
had-
PS5 has no themes, and I'm like, you're boring. And the
Yeah.
Switch has no themes,
Yeah.
and it's boring.
It's the stupid minimalist era of like, give me the weird stuff back. Like that's what made
Mhm.
these
The first
consoles
thing-
fun.
The first thing I did when I got my Switch was I took a picture of the title screen of Fire Emblem Three Houses, because that was like the game that I played first on my Switch. I got Fire Emblem Three Houses. I took a really cool picture of like the opening screen without any text on it, and I was like, I'm gonna go set this as my Switch wallpaper. Joke's
Can't.
on me, light or dark mode.
This is why so many people are cracking their Switches, so they can put custom themes on their
I'm
Switch.
just scared to.
And I'm not saying do it.
Yeah.
I'm just saying I get it.
Yeah. I'm like scared to crack my Switch because I see a lot of like Animal Crossing mods when I'm looking for like
Mhm.
ideas and like path codes and stuff, and then I'm like, don't do it. You don't need fairy lights in your trees that
Yes, you do.
badly.
You don't want none of this.
I do though. That's the problem.
This is why you get a second Switch.
Well, I was thinking
Uh.
about it, but
I can't even crack my 3DS, and like they turned off all the online capabilities last Monday. So
I've been playing.
Rip the
Rip.
goat.
I've been playing my.
That's a
servers.
handheld. We're still
It's a
on Gen
handheld.
7.
I've been playing Fire Emblem Sacred Stones on my 3DS. Thank you.
That's not a PlayStation or an X360 or a Wii game either. Though, there was a Fire Emblem on the Wii and it was really good.
Radiant
That's
Dawn.
true.
Radiant Dawn.
I remember seeing it when I worked at GameStop.
So with that, we're gonna bring this towards the end of this, which is we still got 2 more generations.
Oh yeah.
But Generation
Part
7,
3.
huge. It's like the Generation 7 is the Final Fantasy of this. Huge, just huge, right? We haven't spent our time talking because they are all so uniquely exclusive to each other. But
Mhm.
when we get to Generation 8, which starts about 2012 to now, Generation 8 sort of tries to integrate everyone else's stuff together. They want the things that they got from stuff together
I
on
have a
that. This is
question.
the PlayStation 4.
But
Hold on.
okay.
This is the PlayStation 4, the Xbox One, the Wii U, and now at the tail end of this will be the Switch.
How can it be until now when we have the PS5, the Xbox, whatever, the One S, Series X, whatever, and the Switch? And how is that
I
all
also-
Generation 8 or whatever?
I also kind of wonder that.
Okay, so the generation timeframes are based upon manufacturing dates. That's why I've been listing out the
Right, but
manufacturing
you can't
years,
say
not when the
2012
creation years.
until now because the PS5 came out in what, 2019? 18?
But they're still making PS4s. They're still manufacturing new PlayStation.
I don't
So
like
even though
this.
Generation 8 is still being produced, we're technically on Generation 9.
Yes, because
Correct.
all of those
Okay.
consoles, save the Wii U, are still in production today.
Nobody cares about the Wii U.
Hey now,
I said what I said.
my feelies.
I love you and I love your feelies, but I don't love the Wii U.
I love
But
the
yeah,
Wii U.
manufacturing wise, the 7th generation starts in 2005 but doesn't stop until 2017. This by that technical means that the 6th generation, which doesn't end until 2013, we've had 2 different console generations being manufactured at the same time. Then that's not unheard of. That was the weirdest thing about the Sega Genesis. People didn't stop making the Sega Genesis until what, 2005, 2006?
That's
No,
Because-
2005.
See the first part of this podcast
Mhm.
for more information on that.
Back to Console Wars 1, yeah, to get to
Bum,
that.
bum, bum, bum.
But yeah, so when they talk about generations and their gap years, they're talking about the years of manufacturing, not the years of when of release and dates and such. No one's made the new game for the Wii in a while, but people are
2023.
still making the Wiis.
2023.
Well, and they turned off the Wii U eShop and the Wii U servers. So
Can I tell you something,
Wii U is
Spice?
dead.
I'm sorry that I was so mean to the Wii U. I never even played it. I never had a Wii U, and I never.
You're just a hater?
I just know how badly, like, there weren't a lot of games, and it didn't sell well, and it like went out of production
Okay.
very quickly, and so like,
Okay.
yeah,
Might I be the Wii U apologist for a moment here?
You
yes.
may. I have thoughts.
The floor
I'm
is
going to take the
yours.
floor.
Once you're
So-
done, I have thoughts.
The Wii U definitely is one of those bridge systems where it is that bridge. Like, if there is a mommy and a poppy that made the Switch, it is the Wii U and all the DS systems together. Because the implementation of the things they learned in creating these consoles created the Switch. But the Wii U had a strong library. The issue is the library came too late because you had games like the remake of Twilight Princess, which, yes, that's an older game. The joke here is Twilight Princess always comes out right before another console's about ready to break for Nintendo. I am waiting for the Twilight Princess announcement, and then I know Switch 2 Electric Boogaloo's on the way. We're not there yet. I know it's in the pot. Come on, Nintendo. Give me my favorite Zelda again.
What is this, Skyrim?
No,
Kinda?
Skyrim just is there.
Skyrim
You
just
always
exists.
Skyrim's
Skyrim has
also.
existed for years before Skyrim came out.
It's
Like-
true.
Twilight Princess is a harbinger.
Yes,
Uh-huh.
it is.
And-
It is the one that brings you the truth, and the truth is new system on the way.
Yeah,
Set
that's
aside
the
your money
truth.
now.
Unlike Doom, which is, it works.
It runs on
It
everything.
does its best. So, like, you had the Kirby's Epic Yarn,
Mhm.
fantastic game. You had the Yoshi games, really strong on that. One of
Woolly
the
World.
stronger Paper Marios is on that title, is on the Wii. You had the advent of amiibos and amiibo integration, and the integration between Wii U and 3DS and how those things would talk to each other. Like, I remember using 3DS console with the Wii U for several different games. So the things they did were really strong and really smart. They just all came too late when the pot was already too full from the other consoles, and the whole, like, the internet wants more powerful technology on Nintendo. That's not Nintendo's motto. It's never going to be. They're never going to be cutting edge. It's just not what they do. They're still in the we would like to play philosophy for their builds.
Mhm.
I pass my time to the rest of the class. Feel free to tear me apart accordingly. I will
I
remember
have
this come Christmas
I
time.
have a very quick comment.
Do it.
I didn't realize that there was 3DS like capabilities with the Wii U, but that does remind me about the GBA with the GameCube, and that's
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's not unheard of.
So
Like,
what's
the-
crazy? That's a great segue for what I wanted to say. They released Super Smash Bros. For the 3DS and the Wii U at the same time.
Oh,
You could play both of them together. So if like you had a bunch of your friends over and they didn't have a Wii U but they had a 3DS and they had the game for it, they could play Super Smash Bros. With you from their 3DS in the same room as you.
It was
which
the
later will be
way
integrated to the Ultimate, which is why the Ultimate has what 8 players.
Yeah.
8, and
Oh,
they
yeah.
Wii U did it first that way too, because you could use the 3DS system to talk to it. The Animal Crossing board game did it as well. Some of the Pokemon.
There's an Animal Crossing board game?
It's not great. Don't get your
Oh.
hopes up.
To kind of go off
It's sad.
Oh.
other bangers that weren't mentioned, the Bayonettas
Yeah.
came
Oh
about
yeah.
on the Wii U. Oh god, what else? Pikmin had a pretty good showing. Pikmin 3 was fairly well
Pikmin did a
received.
good
Yeah.
showing.
Chibi Robo, I think,
Chibi
also
Robo,
had.
Wonderful 101.
So like,
Tokyo Mirage Sessions, which was a mix of
yeah.
a JRPG like
It was
Persona
Fire Emblem
and
Shin,
Fire Emblem.
and Shin Megami Tensei. They have that on the Switch, and I was looking at getting it a while ago.
Yeah.
so give it about 5 more years, and you will see on YouTube the kids who grew up with the Wii U making their nostalgia retrospectives about all the great games on the Wii U.
Mhm.
Now, were people talking about other games more? Absolutely. Wii U just kind of did its own thing in the corner, but honestly, I think Nintendo was already, like, Leo talked about that 50% R&D budget. Nintendo was already well into Switch development.
They've always been. Their integration is amazing. Like one of the craziest games, and this is back in the GameCube era that I had a whole lot of blast for, is the Legend of Zelda Four Swords, where you had to have a Game Boy, and you had I think it's a GBA, a Game Boy Advance for that one. You had to have the Game Boy Advance and the GameCube to play it together.
Yep.
And a special port to make it all work. But
And that's how you got the
Nintendo
extra
is
dungeon.
Yeah.
and but Nintendo's always been an innovator. That is where their strength lies, not
Absolutely.
in power.
360 had Uno though.
That's true. Hey Ash,
Yes.
where do you fall into the great Wii U debate? Was it a good console or not?
I never touched it. I knew
Really?
no one with it. No one in my circle ever had a Wii U. We skipped straight from the Wii to the Switch.
All right,
But-
come over. I got it.
But
I still got mine.
Unlike Liz, he's not a hater.
I
That's
apologize.
true. That's true.
I apologize.
Thank you, Ash, for being honest and also not a hater.
Ash can't be a hater. That's not
Hashtag
his jam.
Not
It's
a
not
hater.
fancy. You can't be
He's
a
not
fancy
fancy.
hater.
You can't be
It's
that
not-
fancy when that.
to the
Now
creed.
the other two consoles, though, the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One, become really weird at this time because they essentially want to do they want their version of the other guy's stuff, but also their stuff. But then they make some weird choices. This is the one that Liz brought up in Console Wars 1, where Xbox One decided, and this is a dumb idea, they decided, you know what? It always has to be online. Do you know
no, there was
what
there was the always online thing, but it was the that they didn't have plugs for international for the international market, and people were like, well, my husband is deployed, or I spend time overseas, or I spend half my year in a different country or whatever. And there was the one dude who in the it was at the E3. It was at E3 at one of the press conferences, and they were talking to him, and they were like, yeah, well, what about this, this, and this? And he was like, haven't you heard of a 360? And they,
Which
and there's
he's the precursor to don't you have phones?
yeah. And people were like, are you kidding? And also about sharing games because they were going to be digital only. And that was when I talked about it before, how Sony was like, this is how you share games on the PlayStation.
There's marketing data that they have for these consoles. Do you know what the Xbox 360's biggest marketing data they have worldwide? Military.
Yep.
Yeah, and that's
Checks
because
out.
like they can play multiplayer games with their friends over there, and like, you know, it's one of the biggest. Like, you can just hop into a lobby, spend a couple hours just hanging with your friends, doing what.
Right, but
I mean,
military also has security, so they can't be online at all.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're deployed into another country, you need to have a way to get that power in there. It
Yeah.
was a bad idea if
Just
if the majority of your market share is military.
yeah, and they're land partying it up
Yeah.
in the up over, overseas or whatever. And they don't have a power source to make their console work. I remember people were like it was like instantaneous because that's how social media works. Is something like that drops and within seconds people are like laying into it.
Yeah, PlayStation 4's biggest problem was its shop marketing stuff. What was it? One of the biggest security hacks for credit card data being stolen was the PlayStation
Yeah, and
4.
then I remember when people finally got all their stuff back and organized or whatever, and they upped their security, they were like, "We're gonna give you all like 4 free games from this list of games." And they were like as an apology, and they were like not that good. It was
Hmm.
It was the same 4 games that would be re-released 16 times.
Yeah.
So it's Skyrim.
I
Skyrim.
got I got a top-down zombie shooter that was a twin stick shooter, and I can't do twin stick shooters, but it was the only one that looked even remotely interesting. I think maybe Infamous
Hmm.
might have been on that list as well, but I don't hold me to that. I just remember getting Infamous somehow, and I enjoyed it.
I'm holding Liz to that.
It might have been because I had it digitally, and I didn't buy digital very often.
So here's a question. Obviously, we're talking about like home consoles in your home doing the gaming. Can you make an argument as we go from Gen 8 to Gen 9 to add PCs as a console?
So yes and well, no, not as a console. Consoles, by its definition, is they're isolated to themselves. That's what makes it a console.
I can
However,
hear the PC Master Race cranking up right now.
the real reason why you can't do this is because of how PCs evolve. Whereas a generation for a console is done in one big jump, PCs are piecemealed and they evolve as you go throughout the years. You can just you people don't unless you happen to have the money to just strip down and build an entirely new computer. Most people will end up cannibalizing parts. A hard drive, for the most part, until SSDs start coming out, you could just stick with the same old hard drive and just add another hard drive, or add more RAM, or change the chip, or change the video card. This, that, and the other. That's why we don't count the PCs, not because we can't do that, because there's no major change for it. They're minor changes that happen over the large course of time.
But
And
also,
that
like,
the thing is, so here's where it gets
yeah,
different though.
go ahead.
By this point, especially around the Xbox 360 times, PCs is a contender against against consoles. So back in the day, PCs were not considered a contender because you had to have a crap ton of money to have a home computer. In fact, it got so bad that Atari had to make a half computer. And this is how Apple ended up coming up with the design for the Apple II, which is the first big home computer. But for the purposes of gaming, that's why they did it in consoles originally, is because it was too expensive to try to make a whole for people to get a whole computer game.
So the reason I ask is that now we're at this moment of greater integration between PC and console systems.
Mhm.
Things like, the Steam Deck versus having a PC in Steam. Things like Games Pass, where you pay the same amount each month to get the same access to games on both your PC and your Xbox.
Yeah, generation
That's
wise,
where I'm kind
yeah,
of thinking about it.
and that makes sense. So there's this starts back in the Xbox 360 timeframe. One of the biggest innovations of the Xbox 360 was to have certain things that were integrated into your computer. If you had if you had Windows as your operating system, it used the same encoding that they left in there for the Xbox controller. So if you had an Xbox 360 controller that was hardwired, you could just plug and play for it. Microsoft's plan originally, and this is what they've been doing for a while, is, and it's kind of a weird running joke, they would release an exclusive for the Xbox. Give it a couple of years, you could get it on PC. And anyone who's talked to, and we've even had game designers on the show, Rob, for example, will explain that if an IP is given up that usually means that that company no longer thinks that they can make money off of that thing. There is people in pawn shops that will make tons of money off of an Xbox controller over an Xbox 360 because the controller's technology was still similar. However, what we have now is integration. PC stuff is, and there's no reason to have a console separately from a PC anymore because now we have so much integration for it. The console and the PC ultimately have the same powerhouse for each other. You used to, what was it? Crisis back in the day was a PC
Impossible
exclusive.
to play.
Yeah, because only a PC could have the specs
Not even a
enough to actually
PC
make it
could
work.
play it half the time. That was its problem.
It used to be a bragging right if your computer could run Crisis. That was
Jeez.
a thing. Oh, I've got a brand new computer. Can you run Crisis? No. It's top of a line computer. Yeah, but you still can't run Crisis. You're gonna need it's no good to you. But yeah, no, this integration becomes a thing, and it's actually both an advantage and a detriment at this point in time. This is where I think Spice was getting at with this. So when we get to the PlayStation 4, the PlayStation 3, we also have Steam, GOG, other series and things that are coming out. I think at this point, Epic Game Store, and then other companies that are starting to make their own stuff. What, EA had their Origin?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, they still do.
And then Ubisoft had their own thing.
Mm-hmm.
Uplay.
And they were things that could be integrated for it, but a lot of that stuff started with the Xbox 360, with the Xbox Live, except with Steam. Steam started with Half-Life because they wanted to make a way to get people to integrate their games together, because before that you had to go through a mess of a thing on what's called GameSpy, something Spy.
Oh, that sounds right. That's a core memory.
That was back in the day. Well, I'm trying to remember what it was called. It's something Spy. I know that.
Yeah.
But it was integrated with other games because what that network did was it basically worked as the friends list without a friends list. And certain games still required it, but now they don't work because that tech is gone. If you ever wanted to play the old Command & Conquer games, you had to go through that as a third party. If you owned the old Command & Conquer games, you could never play it with another friend because you would have to rig something special in the back tech ground to make it work. But now we have PC. At this point, one of the biggest things that happened is independent game companies. Games that were designed for the PC are just starting to be integrated into the shop network, and those shop networks integrated them into their consoles. This is one of the bigger things. The Xbox Live started it, so the Xbox did it. The PlayStation would continue to do it, and all right. See, this is where it becomes messy for these guys because the PlayStation wants what the Xbox has, and the Xbox wants what the PlayStation has, and they're trying to find a weird middle ground for itself. It was kind of detrimental because essentially the only difference between buying an Xbox One or a PlayStation 4, exclusives, and if it wasn't already on PC. So it sounds weird, but yeah, they were trying to wait until the next innovation. Then the Switch comes out. The Switch changes it. Now we have a portable and a console and everything all wrapped up into one. And it does this because Nintendo doesn't stop their innovation. And you see that with the Wii. That's where things get kind of murky on that one. So the 8th generation has its list of games. It has its things. But as far as the generation goes, it gets weird because there's not that much specific between these. Mm-hmm. Except for Nintendo, which came into the game way too late for the Wii U, but then came up with the Switch way early. Then we get at this point where
Liz, did you want to say something?
Yeah. So the Switch we know is like a console that you can hook up to the TV, and it's a handheld console. So right. Does that mean we can only talk about half of it?
I was literally trying to be helpful, Leo. My apologies.
I was like, I'm probably beating the joke to death, but I don't care. I'm going to ask it anyway.
No. It's like gravy trains, boats, planes, and automobiles. You never let the bit die.
But I guess that would circle us down to the last and the newest generation, which is the 9th generation. The 9th generation has its own series of problems. So at this point, the Switch is still there. That's counted as both the 8th and the 9th generation. It's the only console that is counted as both of that, not because it's just a console handheld or because it's called a Switch, because of the epidemic, because of 2020. One of the things is a whole lot of manufacturing companies had to stop hard because we had an international plague going around. So because of that, and design issues became a problem, and so chipsets, computer problems. Like I think it's just barely now prices of video cards alone started to finally start going down. You also had other things that were coming into play at that time, which is Bitcoin miners and which were using the high powered graphics cards to try to do all that mining and computing.
Yeah.
But because of that, the whole market got thrown out, and since the manufacturers that are making this stuff had to stop hard, it messed with the system itself. The PlayStation 3 and the PlayStation 4 were being sort of toted before they could even bother to get the companies themselves had to make a choice. Try to get the new system, which if they were going to the new system, you would probably ruin your company because you're jumping into the bandwagon way too early with with very little to no prep, because no one's making the parts that you need.
I've got a bit.
So,
sorry, go ahead.
yeah, and so the only advantage that the Switch has is by this point in time, the Switch has already been built. Kind of like what happened to the Xbox 360. They got a year ahead of the game before everyone else. At this point, the Switch is already out, and you could still get it. But what was it? Some stores, people were like, not even camping out, just sort of scouting the place just to see if today was the day there was a PlayStation 5 in there.
Tracking shipments. I mean, trying to fight bots online. Yeah, a bunch of those measures.
Mm-hmm.
My biggest complaint with the PS5 is that they're already talking about it entering the end of its life cycle.
It's barely in its life cycle.
That's what I'm saying, right? Like,
yeah, people were only just barely able to get it.
And you know, I am maybe the resident Final Fantasy VII stan in GTP. Maybe there's others. I don't know, but
there's others. But no, you're the harder.
Brandon.
I bought a PS4 for Remake.
Mm-hmm.
I played Remake. It was amazing. I bought Remake for my PS5 when I bought PS5 because Integrated had just come out. I bought Rebirth for the PS5. Am I going to have to buy Reunion or whatever the third installment is called? I'm going to have to buy a PS6.
Oh, gosh.
Just so I can play the third part of this game.
PS6 backwards compatibility.
Please.
Remember how I said Twilight Princess was Nintendo's harbinger of a new system? Final Fantasy VII is Sony's harbinger of a new system.
And I'll buy it. That's the problem. But I'm not going to be happy about it, and I will complain the whole time. Like,
they got your picture.
It feels very interesting that we have only had the PS. When did the PS5 come out?
I think it came out in 2019 or 2018 or something.
Just before the pandemic.
Yeah, because there were already chip shortages.
Yeah, and it was like, I remember one of my friends, I guess one of many of our friends in this particular chat, the only reason that she got a PS5 was because her sister works at Fred Meyer and was able to see when the shipments were coming in, set one aside, and texted her, like, come get it, like, now.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I got mine on a payment plan through Amazon because it was the.
Oh, interesting.
I mean, and they didn't raise the price for it. I don't think I paid any like extra or anything.
No, scalpers raise the price for that one.
Yeah, but I mean, usually when you go through a payment plan, sometimes the company will be like, okay, we'll do this, but you have to pay like X number or X amount extra because of us or whatever. But thankfully they did not do that. But like getting a PS5, when people are talking about like the PS5 and the Switch, or the PS6 and the Switch 2, I'm like, I feel like there's still so much life left in both of those consoles, and I feel like even though I play my Switch almost every single day, I feel like I still have only touched the surface.
So it is a little bit weird in that, right? Like, let me say this one thing, Spice. Sorry, I know.
No, I'll just
She'll just sit here and
wait.
suffer.
So PS4 was released November 15th, 2013 in the United States and Canada. So you had from 2013 until 2020, 7-year give take time frame.
Which is roughly a good amount of time for most generation
Yeah.
consoles.
Makes
About 7
sense,
years.
right? So we are at year 4 for the PlayStation 5.
Yeah. I think the one that surprised me was because I got a Switch November 2019. I got the Switch Lite, and then I ended up getting the Animal Crossing Switch the following March. But I'm always like, oh yeah, the Switch came out in like 2019, and it's like, no, that came out in like 2017 or something. And so I'm like, no wonder the Switch 2 is coming out, because that's like the natural span for it to like its lifetime. But I still feel like there's so much life left in it that I feel like it could just keep going forever. And please don't make me spend more money on consoles. I'm a poor college student again.
So
I mean,
two things.
Yeah,
If I
please,
may.
sorry. Yes, thank you, please. You've been waiting your turn.
Sorry.
Go for it.
For once, I'm being patient. Two things. One, I don't think the next Switch will be this huge, big jump like between the Wii U and the Switch was. I do think it'll be more like the difference between the 3DS and the new 3DS.
Ooh, or like the Switch and the
Because
OLED
clearly, yeah, because clearly they're kind of thinking about their game development in similar ways. But secondly, here's my question for the class. All right, who all owns a Switch?
Hand up.
I do.
Everyone.
Basically everyone in this room.
Everyone does. Who all owns a PS5? Dane and Liz. Who owns a current Xbox?
Xbox One X's, I think it's titled.
Yeah.
Crickets.
Yeah. And that's pretty general across the board. Some people own PS5s. Again, it's like the PS3. Like, if you're the JRPG kid, you have a PlayStation. Weebs love PlayStations. Not Nintendo, PlayStations.
It is a little bit interesting to me, too, to that point that, you know, with PlayStation, there are some exclusives that don't right away come to PC, or that some don't come to PC at all. But with Xbox, that old adage that Leo mentioned earlier, it's like, oh,
A couple of years.
I'll just wait for the PC port to come out, eventually, or day one in some cases.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Now, where the Xbox has One X has an advantage is that the Xbox One X beat the clock on everybody else because it came out in 2017. So
It's been
It
out
was-
that
there was-
long?
yeah, it's been out for a while. That's what
What the
people
heck?
forget. But it had so many production
That's what
issues.
it looks like a
And
mini
that was
fridge,
before
right?
the pandemic.
I think there's a Mountain Dew one you can get that can actually like cool your stuff.
There's
you
like
know?
I remember furniture stores like IKEAs and stuff would actually, when they were showing off like entertainment centers and bookshelves and stuff, they actually had like cardboard cutouts of the sizes of the new Xbox console and the PS5, so that you would know if it would fit on that entertainment system or not.
That's really smart, actually.
Yeah, I thought that was
Yeah,
clever.
because it is the biggest of them all, I think.
But also, there are no like big mainline games for Xbox anymore. They've been teasing Fable since the last one came out, and nothing's happened. Like Halo had its little show, and was there a Halo game that came out this cycle? I don't think so.
Yeah,
Did anyone like it?
it's not Reach. What is it?
Infinite.
Thank you.
Infinite?
Halo Infinite,
Okay.
yeah. But Halo Infinite also was designed as a mass multiplayer, so it was also on PC too.
Well, there's
Yep.
also
Yeah.
like a lot of the like a lot of exclusives are now cross console. It's pretty rare to find like a PlayStation exclusive or an Xbox
Mhm.
exclusive, because even towards the end of the various cycles, like remember Final Fantasy 12 was PlayStation, but then 13 was both consoles, and then you had like suddenly, randomly, and for reasons I still don't understand, only Kingdom Hearts 3 on the Xbox. And I don't know if they ever got like 2.5 or 2.8 or whatever, like anything that fills
did.
in the interim, or if they were just like, here's
Mhm.
3. But like a lot of the exclusives are pretty hard to find anymore, except for like the developers that are associated with the company. So like Guerrilla Games. Wait a second. That's because Horizon is on all of them. Oh my god. Sorry, Sony. Jesus. Is Horizon Zero Dawn on the Xbox? I genuinely don't know because I don't have an Xbox.
Yes.
But like
Horizon Zero Dawn's
the
on both
Last
of
of Us, Last of Us 2, Uncharted generally have stayed on Sony, but that's because Naughty Dog is like part of Sony.
I don't know if it's on Xbox, but I know that Horizon is on PC.
Yes. And I know that Last of Us and Last of Us 2 and Uncharted all are. I did QA for the PC port of Uncharted 4 and Lost Legacy. It was super fun.
Now, where the Xbox One X, I hope I'm saying that right, is going to has its advantages because of its tech type is that it's also linked into the newer version of televisions, the 4K, and so they could develop it, which sounds very, which to non-game historians sounds weird to go connect yourself to the 4K, but that's just what Xbox did. Xbox 360, like we talked about before, linked itself directly with high definition
Remember
television.
what?
They followed the flow of the TV, whereas the PlayStation would follow the flow of data. So when PlayStation 2 came out, 3 came out, Blu-rays that they would allow. But they didn't want to do backwards compatibility because at that point, if they did backwards compatibility, it was something like the game, in order to make all those systems work right, it would raise the price $400
Wrong.
more.
The original PS3s.
I know it's wrong.
The original PS3s were backwards compatible. They took
Correct.
that out because the consoles weren't running as well as they should have been, and were causing PlayStation red rings.
That's right.
And so now it's actually incredibly hard to find a backwards compatible PS3, but PS5s I think can actually play at least PS4 games.
4 and 3, I think, but not all 3. Certain 3s.
Yeah, and
Certain
3s
threes.
could play
Yeah.
PlayStation 1 games, I believe, but that's because it has a little tiny emulator in there.
But yeah, but that was sort of their company line on why, because they dropped the price point a little bit when they did that to make it just a PlayStation 3 because they didn't want to do the backwards compatibility for the PlayStation 2. Which, if you were here for Console Wars 1, that was the key thing to why one of the big things why the Sega Genesis started doing well is because they weren't going to Nintendo was not going to backwards compatible the NES. Their backwards compatibility is something, the idea of being able to play every game on one console has always been the
valuable
goal.
experience. Like, I don't want to have 4 generations of PlayStations plugged in just so I can play my whole library of PlayStation games, and like, I'll do it. I have a PlayStation 2, 3, 4, and 5, and I will plug in any one of them if I really need to. But like, it would just be nice if my PlayStation 5 could just play all of my PlayStation 1, 2, 3, and 4 games.
Well, then you get into the weeds of lost media. Like
Yeah.
how many games have been lost between the changes in consoles, the changes in systems, the changes in like even just access and updates.
Can I tell you?
The changes in tech, the changes in licensing, the changes and we've touched like all of it in the console wars.
Speaking of,
they're all related.
A very interesting find in lost media, there's actually somebody who I managed to get the download from, has the OG unreleased but like 80% finished build of Persona 5 on the PS3, like before the one that was
That's
released.
cool.
So I got a PS3 emulator because I don't have a way to burn that onto a disc, and I got a PS3 emulator and I'm making it work so I can just see like what did it look like, because they scrapped like most of it to make the version that we have now. And I just think that's really interesting for lost media, because like, I don't know, like I went and got the demo for Final Fantasy VIII, because the demo that you play of Final Fantasy VIII is nothing like the final game, because you have Renoa in your party and like Zell or something. Like it's wild. And so I think that like lost media being preserved through backwards compatibility and or even just through like legal emulation would be really cool. Just like, or like if you have an unreleased version of your game and it's not broken or will brick a console or something, like, let us at least look at it, you know? Like,
Or even abandonware.
yeah, like Resident Evil 1.5 was such a, like, people have burnt that to a disc and you can't play all of it, but people have found ways to put it on disc so that you can play what was done of it. I think that's super cool.
Well, it's like, and like we're getting off trail,
sorry.
but like that's why some of those things like the Mega League that happened last year, the year before with Nintendo was huge. Seeing sprites and builds for, you know, NES through like all these gens to be like, what were they thinking? Like, what were the ideas that were abandoned? Like,
yeah,
can some of these things be rebuilt off of what was already here?
Why do we still not have a Parasite Eve remake? Can Abandonware tell me that?
Not tell you, but they might store it. So there's two types of data that's out there that people will explore. There's abandonware, which is games that, for one reason or another, are, and lack of a better term, but it's not exactly the same thing. Just anybody can download it. It's usually the company has gone defunct and they can't renew their own licensing, and now it's off to the winds, like public domain, basically. But it's abandonware because nobody's going to edit. Sometimes you bump into weird situations where you have companies that's their specialty. GOG, that we've mentioned before, Good Old Games. All they want to do is find the old stuff and then keep it, and just to make, and their whole principle is to make sure it works for our modern stuff, so that way you can get it to run. And then you bump into ones that are like what is another one weird scenario for that one? Then you bump into things that are where the manufacturers or such did something weird and accidentally gave it to everybody. And the short story of that one is Doom. There were more copies of pirated versions of Doom than there was Doom, because Doom, when they, and I'll get to this in another episode when I have to talk about Apogee, but essentially shareware to work the way it worked was that they would send you a disc, and with that disc it would have a bunch of the demos in the games. However, because of how Doom worked, because Doom will run on anything, they left the it was going to try out doing something that we see nowadays with certain demos. They would had a phone number. You would call the phone number, get a code, use the code to unlock the rest of Doom, or don't.
That's amazing marketing right there.
It made sense for everything, but they forgot to do it with Doom.
Oh, that's so funny.
Then they did it again with Quake, but this time they locked the rest of the game of Quake. They just left the multiplayer in there. And now there was a bunch of multiplayer Quake games running around in places because of that. But, so this is where we're at the Ninth War. The Ninth War is very calm.
Cold War.
Very, not much is moving around. And the main reason is they're bumping with manufacturer problems, and with manufacturing, with the fact that the innovation has had to slow down because of that, and the fact that we've had to and that how many games are out there now that are just, it's better to release it to all the consoles than to pigeonhole it, because it's better to have, and could there be more exclusives coming down the line? There's always going to be. These companies spend big money on getting these exclusive licenses. They'll use it. You'll not see a Mario game pop up on an Xbox. Halo is never going to Nintendo.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
Like, okay, but like, here's the thing though.
It's
like,
me, Master Chief.
Let's go.
Incredible.
But okay, so
Oh.
that being said, although sometimes they're not
play
going to
it.
do it exclusive, sometimes they're more banding together. Smash Brothers Ultimate has stuff from tons
So
of different
many.
media. And they're like, no, let's just do it. Let's run with it.
I think that's the biggest issue with this gen, even more so than like obviously 2020 pandemic, all the things that we have lived through the past 4 years. There is such a loss of identity amongst the consoles themselves.
Mhm.
So like Nintendo kind of holds its identity down, because if you want an exclusive game, you go to Nintendo. Nintendo has its identity, and you can come to them if you want to get in Smash, but they will not come to you for Nintendo All Kart or like Nickelodeon All-Star Smash. SpongeBob did some weird stuff. Whatever they're doing now, I don't know. Don't give me that look, Dane. I lost the thread.
They're doing stuff.
SpongeBob did some
So-
stuff.
SpongeBob did some things. Don't come at me. But like, so Nintendo is like set in its identity. In fact, it
Right.
might be a little too set in its identity because where do you go from here? Switch to, let's keep going, right?
Yeah.
Another Zelda, another Mario,
Right,
another
like,
Kirby, another Yoshi. Which, don't get
it's-
me wrong, I like
It's
that.
great. The last fresh IP Nintendo had was Splatoon
Yep.
Which came out on the Wii U.
ages ago. So like, again, Wii U, great console. I will fight anyone on this. We'll fight. But like, when it comes to Xbox and PlayStation, they still have mild bits of their identity there, is like PlayStation being where you want the big JRPGs, but not really because you can just wait till it goes in PC. Xbox, well, you can get it on Xbox, but also you can get it on PC. They've lost their identity in a lot of ways, and I feel like that's reflected in the games that come out on them. The
Mhm.
games that get the hard pressed discs. Like, why does everything have a day one and collector's edition now? They have to try something to get you interested.
Exactly. But I still, so this is sort of where I'm wrapping up with this episode for Console Wars 2. Because we're at the tail end. This is it. We're to now.
Woo.
We've seen how the consoles change. We've seen how innovation has moved. We've seen where people move for these things. But there's going to be a point where the consoles, it's tried and tried again. The consoles aren't going to die. It's not going to go away. It'll change. It'll adjust, and it has to. It has to move with the times. But outside of that, there's always a place of just wanting to pick up that box, plug it in, and go.
Mm-hmm.
But that being said, that's sort of how I wanted to do with this and the console wars on that. Any other, I guess, as a final thought for this, all throughout the generations for that one, if you had to pick the one that you stuck with, most games that you've picked up, the most games that you've invested, probably even the most time invested, which is the one console that you did your investment with? For my case,
Which gen, just to make
in
sure?
this case, all of it.
all gens.
All the gens.
All the
not just the
gens.
ones. So you get some loopholes in that one too. I mean, if you were heavy duty to the PlayStation 2, remember the PlayStation 1 is still backwards compatible for it, so you got all that. If I was to put gun to my head, what was probably the biggest and the best is going to be the PlayStation 2. But the one I invested the most with, the Xbox 360. I dumped money into keeping that crazy amount of that multiplayer experience. I've broken controllers. I've got that, but not as much as Smash Brothers have broken. One game, I'll put that under Smash Brothers. I've lost a lot of controllers from that. But Rock Band, Call of Duty, Halo, and so many other Left 4 Dead alone was the only reason I went for Left 4 Dead because I had more friends playing it on the PC at the time. But Left 4 Dead on the Xbox, yeah, I've done that. It's got but I've always been a big multiplayer guy. You get me with a bunch of my friendos, it doesn't matter how crappy that game is, I'm sold. And I bought crappy ass games on the whim of the chance that my friends might play with it. Legit, that's why I bought I stuck with the Battlefield series so long, is because most people were any friends I had was playing it. They just say, yeah, we might be playing this. Good enough for me. I'm in.
It's true.
Sold. But yeah, for me, if I had to do time sync and cash sync and what I've had the most experiences with, it's got to be the 360 for myself. All right,
I'm in the same boat.
Ashwood?
Yeah, the Xbox 360 was my bread and butter. I got my first job just to pay for it, and I worked tirelessly until I could afford it, and I played that every single day for years and years and years. Whenever new games would come out, I'd do whatever midnight release was possible, or that my parents were willing to bring me to, and it's the only console that still sits on my shelf to this day.
Oh yeah.
What was the
So
first
it's
game
still
you
there.
bought for it?
Halo 2.
Halo 2?
There you go.
Nice.
Halo 2.
Dead Rising was mine for my Xbox 360.
Very nice.
But yeah, I had to count that because I've changed TVs and stereo systems for my Xbox 3s.
That's amazing.
All right, let's go with Spice on this one. Now remember, you can go all the way back to the 70s.
Like, here's the thing. Amount
Why
of
was it the Wii U?
shockingly, no. So, like, honestly, console I put in the most hours in throughout time collection, all of that, is the 3DS. 3DS, DS,
Yeah.
Library. That does not work here. With the scope of the question at hand, the nostalgia bids the 64, because that was the one I grew up with as a kid. But
I mean, technically, you can still go with it. They have a port attachment, so you can play it on that. And
That's true.
especially they get the game.
But also, I think it's the console that we have put the most hours into.
It'd be the 360. And here's why. I did not own a 360 until much later. But when I came out of high school, a bunch of things happened in my life, including a period where, like, I was down on my luck. I was homeless, whole 9 yards. And the thing that got me through a lot of it was playing Xbox with my friends.
Aww.
Being able to go to a friend's house and they had Halo or they had Rock Band, or just sitting on the couch hanging with, like, Historic Nerd, if he ever gets on the show. Like, I spent so
I'm
much
sending
time
him a
at
note.
his house, yeah. And it was watching him play Halo or playing Halo with him or just being with friends, being with people that later on, when I did get my own 360, it still became one of the consoles I held onto the longest. I still have it because then it's Skyrim, then it's Fable, then it's
Mhm.
like a mark of achievement for me because I got out of the situation. Yeah, I think it's the 360. Weirdly.
Don't get me wrong, like PlayStation 2 was my bread and butter for a long time, but the Xbox 360 is the one my heart has to go to.
Yeah, like, and that's weird for me to admit because I am like
You're the Nintendo,
Nintendo
girly.
girly. Yeah, like all the way
Mhm.
to my heart and core, but the 360 did more for me for a period of time than the Wii. Not the Wii. You want to talk about a system that did not live up to expectations? I refuse to this day to beat Skyward Sword because I hate the Wiimote and I hate the mechanics so much. Worst Zelda game, fight me.
Well, isn't it on Switch
CDI
now?
Zelda exists.
CDI Zelda's better.
Oh, damn.
Oh, whoa, whoa,
Also-
whoa!
Oh yeah, come at me,
Whoa.
comments section. I'm ripped.
I think that Skyward Sword is on the Switch now, at least. So you could finish it if you wanted to.
Yeah, no, I got mad at the mines and said no.
Okay.
And
You know
I
what?
put it down and I walked away.
Totally fair.
Because, okay, it's not even just the Wiimote. It's just the dungeon design sucks. I'm sorry. I could keep you here for 3 more hours as to a whole series of why Skyward Sword is the worst.
No.
Just the worst,
And
period.
I'm inclined to believe you because you once told me that what Final Fantasy is to me is what Zelda is to you. And,
That is true.
I'm a big Final Fantasy girl, so
Yeah.
I trust you.
I don't care about Demise's toes. You know?
I gotcha. Now, what about you, Liz?
Yeah, follow that one up, Liz.
So this is what's going to be really hard for me because even 4 years ago I would have said the 360 or the PlayStation 2. I put so many hours into the PlayStation 2 and I put so many hours on my 360. I might have even argued my PS4 because I played a ton on my PS4. But honest to God, hand to heart, if I can't include my PC, more hours of anything have gone onto my Switch. Even if just because my over 1,000 hours into Animal Crossing and my 400 hours into Fire Emblem Three Houses, not including the 100+ hours of various other games that I have played, more hours have gone onto my Switch than any other console that I have owned. And so I think that's the one that I would have to go with. And the game I bought that for was Animal Crossing, but that didn't come out I got my Switch Lite in November, and I got the Animal Crossing obviously the following year. But it was Fire Emblem Three Houses.
All right, and to finish this up, let's go with Dave.
Don't make
Which
me
PlayStation are you
choose.
picking, Dane?
Don't make me choose.
Which version of Final Fantasy VII is your favorite? Pick your favorite child.
OG PS1 is my favorite Final Fantasy VII. Just to answer that question, 'cause that question I can't answer. The
That is
remake
the
is
one, yeah.
incredible. God, I don't know. Like, they're all so good.
They are.
I hate this question.
Like,
Except for the new Xbox. Nobody wants it.
Well, yeah, I don't have one of those,
No one
so
bought
that's
that
not a problem. It's hard, right? Because all of these systems, and I think that's what really kind of what this topic was all about, right? All of these systems have had an impact. The ones that I have had access to or have played have influenced who I am today. I remember being a young child and playing Mario and Duck Hunt on the combined cartridge in the NES that my father had. I don't know why he's not a gamer at all. I have no idea how he got that thing, but he had one. I recall that. I remember getting Final Fantasy VII the first time and that blowing my mind. I remember playing Ocarina of Time on the 64. It's so hard for me to choose. In terms of time, it may very well have also been the 360 because, as we've said before, it was such a social console.
Such a rad
and
console.
It was really rad.
That might be one
and I'm
of
a very
my
social gaming. I'm big into social gaming. I love playing games with people. I'm kind of like with what Leo said. If you can get me and my buddies together, chances are I'll pick up any game you want me to. But God, I don't know. Begrudgingly, I'll probably say 360, but PS2 is a big contender. PS1's a big contender. 64 is huge. GameCube's huge. It's hard.
How do you feel about the Wii?
I have a very, as I've told it twice now, a very fun story about the Wii, right? I like the Wii.
I love the Wii.
It did not live up to its potential, I don't think. But
it was fun.
It was fun. And at the end of the day, right? All of these consoles, for their flaws and their successes, that's the point. It's not, obviously I'm not going to remember Red Ring because I never had one.
Oh, I'm Dane. My system works.
Well, that's a party you're not invited to.
Well, I declare.
But, despite all the flaws these systems may have, Red Rings and such, right? The PS3 door that didn't close, or was it PS2 that didn't close all the way because it was vertical and it was, shuttered.
Oh, that was the PS2 because
the Slim, right?
Yeah, the Slim, because you had to move, I think you had to do something with the PlayStation logo that was on there, because if you didn't turn the logo right, it wouldn't close the door.
And no one knew that. And so, all these issues aside, I think that's the point, right, is that these were supposed to be fun, and I think a lot of them accomplished that. They did it in very different ways, and yes, a lot of it is tied to the games that they had access to, but these are the systems that gave all of us, in our formative years and beyond, fun. And I'm just going to be super grateful to them forever for that. They could make no more PlayStations, no more Xboxes, no more Switches or whatever, and those memories would keep me through a bit.
Yeah, if you were going to ask me what was the most memorable console that influenced me, I'd honestly have to go with the 3DO. Beautiful graphics. I remember playing all those games. Never owned it, couldn't afford it.
Sure.
But the 3DO, and to this day, and this is a personal nostalgia thing, I grew up broke ass poor. But now I'm an adult, and people knew, my friends, especially back then, and my family especially, would do whatever just to have me have that one moment of joy to just introduce me to a game. There's a cousin that I have, and they all knew that the only reason that they wanted, he's one of my favorite cousins, but early on, he just wanted me to play their games. That's how I got started into gaming, because he knew I couldn't afford to do this on my own, but he did. And so and he's like, here's a moment of joy.
Aww.
And personally, it's the worst game, and I've spent part of my adult life rebuilding a game collection for the NES and my Super Nintendo of just games I happen to have played once that stuck with me in my head. It is the worst game collection of all time. There's some terrible games in there, but I had that moment of joy with it, and it's burned. And that, of all things of my childhood, is burned into my memory so badly
Yeah.
that I will that people will tell me you should go to eBay or Amazon to go look and buy these games. No.
Mm-mm.
I need to physically be there for the hunt.
Yeah.
That's why retro game shows exist, man. Like,
I will pay money, not as much as I can, to have somebody draw Leo as a game safari person. Because I love that idea of him like going through the bush and being like, it's the hunt.
please link your fan art in the comment section below so we can all look at it
Maybe,
Yeah.
and admire
Maybe
it
I'll
and
do
love
it.
you for it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and speaking of which, I mean, if you what console really got to you? Which was the one that you invested in? Which is the one that you actually had that gave you the memories? Which is the one that unlocked something special for you? I could to this day tell you exactly the moment of when I was playing it through, which got me into history of comics, and it's from Dana Gould, who isn't a big comic, but he was the original voice actor for Gex the Gecko, and I fell in
Yeah.
love with that game.
Yeah.
And all the nostalgia moments, and that got me partway through my history buff moves, and that's not just the only one. There's different tales that people have or different games all over the place. But what I'm saying is that it's going to affect you differently from some of those games that are consoles out there. They will tug at your heartstrings because of whatever you had to do during that time. Maybe they're memorable to you just because they were a moment in time that you existed. Consoles aren't going to go away, and our memories that are tied to it will always be there. But that being said, that doesn't mean that we didn't get a kick of joy even from the worst ones.
And you know what? If the Wii's creepy baby controller is like your favorite thing, you know, that's great.
I have a photo of when that got basically like pennied out at GameStop, so that we weren't carrying it, and they were like, I was told to just take the trash out, and that was in there, so I like had to throw it in the dumpster, and then I like, had my phone and I took a picture of the baby in the dumpster. I'm sure I still have it somewhere.
Welcome to Liz's confessional, her sins
Yeah.
and her
What did I
tragedies.
call it? I think it's a Family Guy skit where it's like prom night dumpster baby.
Yeah,
That's the one.
that's the one.
Yeah. Sorry, this was I wanted to share this, and I might have already shared this before, but Dane, when you were talking about your first time playing Final Fantasy VII, it reminded me of my first time playing Final Fantasy VII. My older brother actually had it, but he lived with my grandma at the time, and me and my mom had gone to visit them, and my mom and my brother went out shopping for whatever reason. I don't know. It came out in 97. I was 10. And I remember, I mean, I'm still pretty goofy, but I was a pretty goofy child. And I did the thing that I'm sure kids did, but I would like wrap my legs around my arms and I would walk on my hands with my legs wrapped around my arms.
Kids do that.
Like a
Do that
weird crab.
weird spider gremlin thing.
Yeah,
they
and-
Oh
do
yeah.
be doing
And
that.
I lost my balance and I fell forward and I gouged my tooth into my lip. I actually still have a little like scar on my lip from it. And my lip got so puffy and it was bleeding. And my grandma was like, do we take her to the hospital? Like, can they even do stitches in her lip? Like, what do we do? And it happened and I was like, uh-oh. And they were in the kitchen. I went to the bathroom and looked and I was like, oh yeah, my tooth went straight into my lip. And so I just went and stood in front of the kitchen like, I don't know what to do here. And they turned and were like, oh my God. And so they got a rag and they got ice and they were talking what do we do? And then my grandma went and propped me. They were head over heart. So they had me sit but at an angle and propped up on pillows, and they turned on my brother's PlayStation 1 Final Fantasy 7, and I was just make sure I don't save over his save. That was my one thing, was do not save over his save. And I did not. This is a different brother than the one that caused the NES trouble. This is a brother that I like. And I played Final Fantasy VII, and I remember, like, I couldn't close my mouth because my lips would stick together from, like, the bleeding and the blood and stuff. Sorry. And it would hurt. And so I was, like, sitting with my mouth a little bit open. I had I had balanced it so that the ice was pressed against my lip so that I didn't have to, like, hold it so I could play Final Fantasy VII.
Did you at least get McDonald's ice cream out of this ordeal? Because that is the only thing missing from this story right now.
I did get made fun of by my mom and I think my grandma's husband. That we were, because at dinner I like couldn't eat properly, and so I had like my fork. This is a clean fork. I just accidentally left it in here.
We don't judge.
And so I would do like this. Just the daintiest little bites, and they would laugh at me for not being able to like close my mouth properly and having to take like baby bites. And I was like, "Cool, I'm hurting."
All right, with that horrible story.
Yeah,
like I said, Liz's confession box.
Yeah.
Her sins,
All
her
right.
tragedies, everything in between.
Also, speaking of bad games, sorry, this is my signed copy of The Bouncer. I had good memories.
I
with it, though.
forgot you had
Yeah.
that.
With that being said, thank you everybody for joining us for another episode of Gaming Theater Podcast. With this podcast being at the end of our season 2, we'll be starting with season 3. So our next episode will be coming out, if my math is right, June 7th or May 17th. One of those 2 days. But yeah, that being said, thank you everybody for joining us. And now that you also have that terrible PlayStation memory as well, bye everybody.
Bye.
Thank you for two seasons.
Bye.
Thank you for 2 seasons. Thank you to our
Yes,
guests.
Season 3.
Heck yeah.
That's Gaming Theater Podcast logging out. Later, everybody.
Thank you to our guests.
Thank you to our guests.
Thank you.
We did it.
Gaming Theater Podcast is hosted, created, produced, and edited by Leo Garcia, the Geek Scorpio. Our music is A Drinking Game. Stock media provided by Stormwave Audio /Pond5. Our cover art is by Adam Parker. You can find him at ParkerGFX on Twitter. If you want to send us some money to help with these episodes, you can do so at patreon.com/gamingtheaterpresents. Want to send support that doesn't hit your wallet? Please leave a review with wherever you hear your podcasts and share our podcast with your friends. It really helps out. Thank you for listening.